practically every one of the top 40 records being played on every radio station in the United States is a communication to the children to take a trip, to cop out, to groove. The psychedelic jackets on the record albums have their own hidden symbols and messages as well as
We don't want you to smoke genetically modified ganja. We want you to smoke the real thing. We want you to smoke the natural herb. Some call it marijuana, some call it sensimedia, some call it lamb's bread, and some people call it ganja.
Welcome to another edition of the Adam Dunn Show, this time for real. And I am here in a new studio, very close to my house. Really close. It's convenient. And so, like I said, last week was the last one at Sohi. Here we are at the new spot. Got some old artwork that everybody might recognize if you've been to my original spot, so I get to break that out, which is nice. And in the studio, I have Hope and Ryan from C4 in Arizona. And they're going to be talking to us about some legislative stuff and all sorts of, it seems like they got their fingers in a few different pies. So, and then I got Shane here with me, Mr. Sonny Chiba himself, who actually put this together. Thank you very much for it. And you guys are all coming for the Indo. Is it?
Cannagrow.
Oh, it's Cannagrow. See, I can never keep up.
Right.
Cannagrow, which is tomorrow and Sunday. Is it B2B or is it a public?
No, it's public.
It's public.
Public. Both days?
Yeah, both days are public.
Okay, cool. So that is here at the same place, Denver Mart, or something else?
That's at the Crown Plaza.
Oh, it's at the Crown Plaza. This is totally different. Totally different new show then, I guess.
Yep.
Wow.
All the way around.
All the way around. And MTI's got it all under control now. We had a little mix up, a little mixed up. So welcome to the Adam Dunn Show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us. We're excited to be here.
Mm-hmm.
So right away, of course, when anytime you hear the word NASA, they go nuts, right? They're like, NASA! My kid was going crazy. I told him somebody from NASA's coming. He's so excited. Do you get that all the time now that you're, like, is that your, on your, because that's your background, I guess.
It is one of my previous experiences, and if I could still be there, I would still be there. If they didn't have the brain drain, at the time I didn't have my PhD. Mm-hmm. I was a biologist, finished up with controlled environment at the U of A. Growing plants in space or working on research to grow plants in space was by far the best job I've ever had.
And is that because of so what was your background before that? Were you doing biology, or was it like? Oh, you didn't have your PhD, but what was it? You were already working on it, or were you
plant sciences, controlled environment, agriculture?
Nice. And so, did you did you envision this future, or was that part of your repertoire, or was it just because you were kind of fascinated by the idea of growing in space?
Actually, the really interesting thing is I had this epiphany at some point when I was a bartender for about 10 years, actually, and never went to college outside of high school, never thought I was going to do science and bartending. That's great. And I decided at some point, I don't know, maybe I need to do something different. Driving home from the bar one night, and I'm working at a local plant nursery, and I had this epiphany, and I was like, I think I always wanted to fly. Mm-hmm. Why not? Maybe I can grow plants in space. I don't know why it hit me. It was just one of those things, driving home late at night, stars were out, singing in the car, and just like, I don't know, it seemed like a very good idea.
Right.
And I started at the nursery. Well, while at the nursery, they put me into contact with people that were doing hydroponics, controlled environment agriculture. And so I'm talking with the director, Gene Giacomelli there at U of A, and I said, having my little interview, and I was like, I want to grow plants in space. It's almost like the way that, we take an Uber here and we're like, I work in the cannabis industry. And then all of a sudden you stop whispering because people say, yeah, that's a real thing now.
Sure.
And so he said the same thing to me, that you could do that. Mm-hmm. And I did. And it was amazing opportunity. And if they would not have had the brain drain, I loved it because the work was solid. It was cutting edge. As a matter of fact, my former boss now owns and runs BIOS Lighting. And this is a company that focuses on LED lighting for plants, not taking, whatever fixture and figuring out how to do LED that way. They start from that.
Right.
And they were doing LED lighting testing when I started at NASA back in, I guess it was quite a while ago now. But so your son has the ability to do things in Mars or International Space Station, or
Which
to
he will.
go to.
He's already ready. He's like, I'm
Absolutely.
going.
I mean, to do the South Pole, they grow plants out there for everybody who's out in the South Pole. So there's a lot of research to be done, but most of it's through academia now, not NASA.
Right. Cool. And then, so Ryan, you're like the director of C4. Started.
I'm the founder and CEO for C4.
Great. And what was the focus? So where's your background coming from?
So my background prior to getting in the cannabis industry actually came from multi-unit and restaurant management. I was doing that, but in the course of doing that in 2006, I suffered a really bad injury in a car accident. Ended up having a lot of surgeries on my leg, learned how to walk again. And people were all too anxious to prescribe me opiates, and I went down that train and saw what kind of, how it was deleterious to my health, and found cannabis as medicine, got passionate about it, got fed up with corporate America and how it was starting to treat people as numbers, not as humans anymore,
Right.
and wanted to get into something I was passionate about. Met a couple very talented scientists. We talked about, the ability and some of the capabilities that we have yet to explore, taking some of these people from classical, whether it's pharmaceuticals or it's, big agricultural, taking some of those people from those classical fields and now applying them to cannabis to see really what we can do, right? So that intrigued me, and we ended up opening an analytical facility in Mesa, Arizona, where we do potency and safety testing, kind of the standard testing that many other labs do.
You do terpenes too?
Yeah, absolutely.
How many can you guys do?
21.
Okay, so
Yeah,
it's moving up.
21
It's
right
moving up. It was like 7 for a while, and then
Yeah.
okay, nice.
And honestly, we can do many more. It's just
Yeah.
a matter of getting the standards and doing those type of things.
Sure.
But we opened with the focus on not only doing the analytical testing. We knew that was going to be the bread and butter of what paid our bills. But we focused on that we wanted to do research and development. And we wanted to end the standoff, if you will, between cultivators and purists that grow this plant. And I think there was a natural division with some of the science entities and the testing laboratories and the regulatory bodies, because no one was adding context and no one was answering questions. And we wanted to see more of a partnership there. Because honestly, I mean, the potential for what science and the practical abilities and talents of someone like yourself and Sonny, and to see what's going to happen once we put those two things together is ultimately going to be so great for the industry, for the plant, and for the patients, which is what we're really looking forward to.
Yeah, and it's really nice to see. I mean, we all kind of get like there's a clash always. There's like a butting heads against each other whenever it's, the real people who refuse to write things down, refuse to, divulge and get all paranoid, and it's just part of the, it's part of the culture. It was always, what kept you going and what kept you, out of the trouble was questioning everything. You know what I mean? Like the people who were like, well, yeah, sure, whatever. They also weren't scientific at all. So finding
We
the
call that empirical testing.
Yeah.
right, and to find the combination, and then but now it's getting really quickly. I mean, the way I watch the whole industry grow, I'm always like, wow, this is. And within 5 years, you see how much more professional things go, and they're crunching even tighter and tighter to that point where yearly you're seeing the improvement. You know what I mean? Packaging, the delivery, because in the beginning everybody could get away with whatever they could get away with, and then once the bar gets set, it keeps going and going, and it's getting really high now. So it's like you got to.
And the margins are getting smaller and smaller.
That's
Yep.
incredibly evident in the Arizona market too, because there's more mature and established markets prior to them, and it's like they came on and kind of had to pick the best of where they could find from all the people that laid the ground before them,
Right.
and have just the innovation's been very rapid.
Well, it's
there.
like we're at the point now where it's a widget. Like shit, cannabis is a fucking widget. Now. We
right.
thought it was like we still look at it as a beautiful thing, and the whole reality is when you handle it properly, that's the key to the whole thing. I mean, it's so obvious. It's like you take it, you grow it good, then you handle it real well, and then you present it. Because it's like giving somebody the most delicate fruit possible. You know what I mean? Because it's kind of going and it's changing, and people are like, you guys are in dry ass place, just like here, but even hotter. I mean, you guys are in the hottest, driest, most.
Oh, but we got a lot of sun. Sun is free.
Oh yeah, for sure, for the growing side, but then for
Yeah.
the drying side, it must be like
challenge.
to train because the thing is, when people used to get it, they'd buy a lot, and then it would dry out too much because
Yep.
it'd be too much. Now they can get it, hand delivered at the right perfect thing, but it's also like once it's out the door, it's it's all up to you guys because people they go into the hot ass car, then they go to so I feel like there's a lot of times when people are pushing out product, the timing is really key, and a lot of people that don't have it, you can just go to a shop and you can tell they've been sitting on it. It's terrible, or it's super fresh, and because they're trying to beat that.
And I find that more often actually is that people really rush the dry and cure side of it, if anything.
And
just
I
to
think
get it
it's
on
a
the shelf.
challenge to do something from an industry standpoint. To be in the past and have to grow on such a small scale and a hidden scale for a crop that we know affects the human body more than any other crop that we have ever known about in the history of man, right? So this is why it's so beautiful, and that's why it's important for us to be able to do everything we can to help those growers come on a commercial scale. And so you can still do a beautiful, delicate, lovely crop on a commercial scale because everyone's got to make a living and you want to you built the business. I didn't build the business. I'm walking into your business. And so how can I help you be able to still do what you love to do and allow me to be a part of that? And and so when we see from a laboratory standpoint a lot of product that comes in, the best ones, and we shouldn't exist in this state that doesn't require testing, so those that test with us care. And we watch those individuals.
So there's no mandatory at all.
No,
Nothing.
it's one of two in a medical state that doesn't require it.
So
Well,
we
here
see
they
those
don't for medical either, which is really stupid. I'm like, that
For
should,
medicine.
Yeah,
that
it's
should be the
counterintuitive.
most obvious. Like,
You can go to a grocery store and get a safer product or feel more confident in that product than you sometimes might feel that you get. But
well, yeah, and it's like ass backwards here. You're like, wait a minute, so you're gonna take the rec? And you're like, yeah, because it's the public. And I was like, what? So the medical are not public or
Yeah,
something?
there's people that are
It's just
actually
not
sick.
people.
Never
right?
mind them,
They're
yeah.
below public. You're not even public. You're just
sick people.
you're sick.
Darwinism happening
just-
over there.
Yeah, it's strange. It's like, and
Yeah.
but
But-
at the same time, people kind of, if they knew that it was for medical, most people were delivering already higher quality, and people complained because the medical was better, but it was untested, and then the rec was crappier, and so.
Or as claimed
Yeah.
as higher quality because it's medical, but until you see the certificate
Well-
of analysis and know the grow and know the growers and know
And how
the
many
genetics.
how many other people are testing there?
I would say in the industry, it's caught on significantly that in some form or fashion, I would say 90% of the places test. But it doesn't mean that they're testing everything. It doesn't mean that they make that part. Like, to give you an instant, there might be a strain, a strain that they may test in January, and you'll see that same test result in like September.
Sure.
Well, that's likely not the same harvest and not
course.
necessarily the same representative sample. So it's those type of things without having a mandated program in place that they test to what best suits their business, which is great. And
Yeah.
but there are people there, and I have to give them a lot of credit, that have now seen the necessity, and I think we all can agree, by and large, cannabis is certainly not a dangerous plant, without question, right? But we see it more from a standpoint of for the people that are sick or that are immunocompromised, and not to mention just having the right of knowing what it was grown with, what's going into your body, what contaminants may or may not be present. And then second to that, what is another big driver is meeting label claims with the edibles, tinctures, different products that come out. We have found, I can only call it consumer fraud.
It is.
Because,
Absolutely.
it is at that level.
Well, they did a test here in Westward, like quite a while ago, but it was pretty scathing in the sense that most places were just not even close. And then, like, Incredibles overdid it, of course. And so they were like, hey, well, it was over. At least it was over. And then they were like, it's got to be exact. And it was just like, wow, man, that's putting people to the spot on an edible when you're saying has to be within, like, 1%.
No, that's not, and it's not realistic if you really understand what goes into
I think
it.
they may have adjusted it after because
Yeah.
it was like a target that was like, wait a minute, if it's 5% over, nope, can't do it. You know what I mean? And it would be better point that it would stay in that range.
Well,
I
and
would
that has
give
a
up
lot to
making
do with
edibles
people
if that was a
understand
rule. I
the
mean, it's
product
almost
you're
impossible.
working with, and then those processors that actually you will test the beginning of a batch, the middle of a batch, and the end of a batch, and they'll do that on a consistent basis and develop these good protocols. You can feel confident that you can train and you can probably produce a consistent product. But we are talking about a plant here, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
So when it comes to this type of agricultural product, we have to understand that if you only want to test an N of 1, and it's going to be the most beautiful big bud that has the most
Sure.
light and all of that, or do you want to do a sample size and be able to report a range? And so I think that's where, people like myself can maybe, and C4 and other good laboratories around the country can help understand why you would want to do a range, and because we don't want to lock ourselves into a single digit value.
Sure. And yeah, I
Because we
tell
can't-
people all the time, it's like, if you're going to do it right, you got to take a bottom, middle, top,
Yep.
mix it all together and
Yep.
get an average, and then kind of go for that to really get to the point of knowing what you got. Whereas
Yeah.
if you just do a cherry pick and go in there and like try to get the high marks when you want to get the high marks.
And of course, that's what people are going to tend to do
Oh, they always
because
do.
that's what's going to help sell. Which we understand they're making a
And then a lot
business
has
out
to.
of it.
I mean, I always noticed that it was the dry weight that kind of really threw everything off, if not it, or just made everything like sound better than it was. If you're just kind of like, wait a minute, let me look at this thing, but I don't know, that makes it a little. It's a little
Don't
bit,
get us started.
Yeah, exactly.
it gets a little sketchy when you get into that because it
It gets
changes
a lot
lot,
sketchy.
especially the higher you go up. I mean, kind of gets into like a certain range where it's like every little micro.
Well, you're
It
also
help.
talking about a laboratory industry that had to develop our own methods, right?
Yeah.
And anything from science and academia, there are protocols, you have standards, you understand the way to do it, you can take classes, but there's nothing like that in the cannabis industry. And our scientists, I mean, brilliant, right? I mean, how do you do a gummy bear? How do you do a concentrate? How do you do the flour? How do you do a brown ice cream? I mean, lube, right?
Yeah.
And so everything, a bath bomb.
Not together though. Not together.
Yeah,
Ice cream,
no.
It depends on which day.
don't cross the streams on that one, please, because that's a problem.
I mean, honestly, it's that goofy.
Right.
It's,
Yeah,
it's,
and it
is
makes
that
it very
goofy.
challenging. No
Yeah.
doubt about it.
Well, that's the thing about
But that's why
cannabis.
we love it.
Well, that is the thing about cannabis in general, which is like, it's cool because you don't really know what's coming around the corner. It's like, could be someone taking it from a totally different angle, and you're going like, oh yeah, no one even thought about that. And it's going to happen because everyone thinks we get to the end of like, okay, it can't get any more because we got like isolate and distillate, and people have taken it to the extreme as far as the percentages, but it loses all of its once it gets to the top, it's like character is gone. It's like just
You're a
the best-
pharmaceutical at that
one
point.
trick pony at that point.
yeah, exactly. You're just kind of like, you are what you are, and that's what you are. And there's no like, oh, yours is better than mine. It's like, it's basically.
How do you really differentiate when
it's-
it's
it gets to that-
99.2
it gets to
or
that-
99.4?
Or
Okay.
is that even what you want?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, and you don't, because the reality is, as we all know, you need to kind of come up with a blend that makes sense. You can't have a just a pure thing and think that's going to be the best thing in the world, because it's
Sure.
like, oh, that doesn't have any flavor.
And
that
it's
doesn't-
individualized too, right? I mean, everybody's going to be responding different, but yeah, I mean, to just have one of the compounds present, I think, is selling it drastically short
course.
from what it has to offer.
But people are going to figure out like ways, to bring it into the different streams as far as food and other things that once people calm down a little bit, because you can break it down, and then once you've taken out this part, now we got all this other stuff, and
Or different ways of growing, like tissue culture.
Yeah, and so we'll get into that, of course. We can get into that. And
these
like,
different things.
well, like for instance, like seeding, for instance, if people are doing that, and like you see like where it kind of loses. Like, to me, that's like really cool, but it's also like, oh, it's really scary, because it's like, now we don't even need the fucking thing anymore. We just need it's like a mushroom. It starts to turn into like, okay, we can take it to the farther than any of us probably ever thought we would. But you definitely would like, and I've seen that material, and I've thought like, okay, well, from what it's supposed to be, I guess it's good, because like stuff that like we were just talking about, where it's like, what are you gonna do this? It's like, but it sounds great on fucking paper.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's kind of the struggle, because you have people that are purists, been doing this for a really long time, right? And we see this rapid advancement. We see it just like take off like a lightning bolt, right? And then we have to consider, just because we can, should we? And are we getting away from what makes it the wonderful plant that it is and provide the healing that it does, and what makes all of us as enthusiastic about it as we are?
And how do we support those individuals like yourselves who are the ones that brought the industry to
And
where
that have
it's
the right
at,
motives, right?
and not be taken out once it finally does become big big farm and that kind of industry. So how do we keep it
Yeah,
yours, ours, and keep it sustainable?
What do you think, Shane? What do you think, Shane?
Are we?
Give us your.
It's
give us-
definitely a challenging time, and we're moving into the era of a lot of people licensing and doing
Yeah.
proprietary stuff and patenting and utility patents and plant patents and
It's funny too, because in the beginning I was like all over the shit, and then I kind of I got tired of it. It was like, not another fucking lunch, dude. I'm so tired of lunches.
One
and
more
people-
conference call and I'm
people-
going to freak out, man.
It's literally like you were saying, brain drain and fucking that. Now we're doing we're having that on a constant, and people like him and I, we're oh yeah, sure, and we're like tell people stuff, and then at a certain point we're like, all right, that guy made like millions, and he doesn't remember my name, you know what I mean? And he just fucking I told him everything, and
Yeah.
I remember that conversation. It was like I think I got a pasta with fucking fettuccine thing. So I got a lunch, and he got to fucking go run away with that idea. And you could see it when sometimes they'd be like, all right, I got to go, and they'd be gone, and then you'd be like, wow, I never heard from him again, and then
So writing
find out that
everything down.
they tried and they got so far, and then they got ripped off by some guy, and then you're like, oh, I could have told you that, that what's gonna happen. But in general, it happens all the time, and it's like because it's cannabis, you know what I mean? Like it's such an accessible sort of medium for so many people because everybody smoked weed. So they're like, I smoked weed, and it's like but there was like this whole time period where they didn't smoke weed because they just did other stuff and were running around. But now all of a sudden they're,
Back.
yeah. And there's a lot of guys, like when I was in Miami, it was funny because everybody was about 70 years old. They were running huge amounts of cocaine back in the day, and they just every guy that came up to my booth would tell me all this shit, and I'd be like,
You get
really?
stories.
Because they'd be like, you see it right around the corner? I used to bring in so much cocaine. I was like, dude, that was like the last guy just said the same thing, and I was like, there was just like one after
There's
another,
a pattern
and they were like,
there
I got
in
milk,
Miami.
and they have all this money, and they don't know what to do with it, and it's just like they're ready to fucking get into weed now, and I'm like, no, you guys were
Yeah.
all about money then, and now you're still all about money, and you're not gonna.
Yeah.
But it's going to happen. They're going to get in because their kid and their kid's friend. My kid's friend smokes a lot of weed. Get that kid over here. You know what I mean? I can just.
cow. That's what
There's
you
just
do.
so many of these. You see it at the trade shows. You just see little groups and the one stoner kid and the white-haired guy and the. It's just like that's another one.
Well, hopefully they'll underestimate how much actual work is involved, and then
That's
yeah.
like the number one thing I tell people. I'm like, the work. They don't
Yeah.
even know. If they only knew, and. It's also the friend situation, and we're still in that kind of phase where it's like, but my friend said to just put up 300 air conditioners and have them all split airs, and you're like, what? You come
even
in, you're
know
like,
what you're talking
what are you talking about? And I make these little boxes, and then you fill up the room, and you're like, oh no, you're like just disasters, But
Yeah. I will say from the standpoint of my fellow colleagues at the U of A in controlled environment, the one thing that we never lacked on was work because you're running greenhouses and you're running grows. And I honestly feel like I'm full circle and came back home because having your hands on the plant is the whole reason. Honestly, it's something about gardening and farming and being with the plant and smelling it and being a part of that. And it's a little bit bizarre for us to be in the industry because we're not the corporate person who brings in, and can support the son or whatever and bring in their big corporate money. We are still paying student loans and we're not, from the ground up roots of growing and maybe not necessarily know who's who. And so to come into it from this perspective is a little bit of an outsider, but with the utmost respect to say, can I play too? From the plant perspective, from the medicinal perspective, this is everything that drove us into our own major. We lived our lives and then a little bit at a sidebar, and then you live your lives in the greenhouse, and maybe on Friday can maybe find some time for a pitcher of beer, but you're living your life by a pest outbreak, Jesus Christ, Sunday night, birthday, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If the irrigation goes down,
Right.
there's no.
Yeah, that's you're living life right there.
Yeah,
and that's
and so
and that's
it's
part of it.
so much
And
fun
that's
coming
and then the funny
back
part
to
is
it.
it's always in your head, like no matter what. Even when you go on holiday, you feel guilty. Not even on holiday, you're working,
Yeah.
and it's still guilty. You're guilty. It's like guilty
you-
because you're not there, and then you're like the whole point of these things' lives. You know what I mean? Like
Even
so-
if you get automation going, you still want to be there. If you don't
Well,
see
yeah.
it every day.
Yeah, I mean, automation would
I
make
go
the
to a
plants
greenhouse-
less. Maybe plants hate you a little more, but at the same time,
Or the employees maybe, but I go
But
into
you
a
still got-
greenhouse and they're like, "Why are you looking underneath?" And I'm like, "I want to see what's under the leaf," right? I mean, it's just like that's the perspective you want to have if you're really growing.
oh yeah, you gotta put different eyes on a room, especially like when you're if you were there when you put the plants in and you leave for a couple weeks and do like some trips or something, come back, it's almost always not the way you would have done it, no matter what. It doesn't even matter. You walk in, I mean, occasionally you get somebody who just does things the same rhythm as you, but it's very hard because it's like you become part of the, either the you're either helping out or you're completely fucking it up, which is, that's where it really is the guidance. Like you see people that just overwater or, like.
Or
that-
don't even know how to water.
That's like, especially when you're in dry conditions, it's like even harder because some people are used to, they come straight out of like East Coast and they're used to this humidity thing and they haven't like time to play around and mess around and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, this stuff's like.
But that's the key is what questions do you need to ask when you get started or when you walk into something? What don't I know? I'm in a new environment. I'm in the desert now, and I am from Oregon, Seattle, Washington, Colorado. What's different about this environment? Okay, ask those questions.
I mean, here.
And the best growers do that.
Here, especially outdoors, is like much more. It's different. Anytime someone from Cali's here, they're like, at a certain time of year, it's perfect, it's easy, but it drops off here like in a heartbeat. But then it also does this little dip that if you're local, I'm not even
You
local,
know
I've
what
been here
to
for
do.
7 years, I'd be like, oh, okay, it's just going to be one night. It's kind of like take care of them on that night. And then, you got another month. And they're like, no way, it's got to go down. Like, it's over. I was like, no, dude, just relax. It's like one little slap you get at the beginning,
Yeah, same thing at the nursery. If it was getting below freezing, be like, just water the plants. What? No, water the plants. Because if it's dry, all that
Yeah.
freezing air gets in there and be like, just water the plants. It's not going to be the end of everything. You're still going to have your tree nursery. Everything's going to be okay. Or even in the landscape. It's just a matter of experience.
So you guys have greenhouses that are under control of by C4, or you're just like you're talking
We're
about
not growers.
You guys are okay. No.
Yeah,
No.
we want to do the research and development. We do the testing right now.
Yeah, that's what I thought. You guys are just doing testing.
And the consulting is a big deal because I'm very passionate about making sure that any knowledge that I can do to help somebody, be a better grower or ask those questions, that's what we want to do.
Yeah.
And then the R&D is going to be important at some point. So we will get into that. It's just a matter of making sure that we're doing it for the research purposes and not from the profit standpoint.
Yeah, and we have been able to find some of those relationships out there that have been our long-term clients that now we have access to be in their grow, to work with some of their genetics, to have them partner with us so we can make some of those advancements. And it's it's really been good because there's 3 or 4 core clients out there that have really helped us in progressing. So
What kind of equipment you guys using mostly?
for the testing, we have UHPLC
Okay.
for the cannabinoids, and then a GCFID with headspace analysis for terpenes and residuals.
Okay.
And then we're looking to bring in a triple quad LCMS, which is basically the instrument that's used in any of the regulatory states that are doing pesticide analysis.
Right.
But one of the challenges for us is that all those instruments I just listed are extremely expensive.
Sure.
So if we're going to look into do that, we have to know that the demand's going to be there. We have to know that people are interested enough and care enough to run that analysis, or else we just bought a $200,000 paperweight.
Right.
So that's a challenge in Arizona. Every time we want to reinvest and we want to expand our offering, we have to make sure that it's warranted and that the market will receive it well and that there will be a demand there to justify that expense. So we have to balance that, because what we'd like to do is all the tests we can to protect and to be able to do R&D and to be able to learn all we can. And I mean, we're nerds, no doubt about it. And as much information and data as we can find, we love nerding out on that. So,
Well, and the labs are not the cash cow of the industry.
no, certainly not in
Especially
Arizona.
not in
Maybe
Arizona.
maybe in other states, certainly not in Arizona.
There's like always a rush for them, and people kind of like, it's kind of like making clones where you think it's going to make you a lot of money, but in the end, you're just throwing away a lot of materials and kind of like running through shit and like getting certain times.
It's an expensive proposition to run a lab, no doubt about
complete
it.
like fuck ups and be like, oh, well, there goes another or whatever. You know what I mean? And you have to, and you really got to be on your game. And then of course you guys are maintaining a clean room and being all like high tech. I hope about it.
Well, I mean,
is it a tree fort? Is this a tree fort?
No, it's not a tree fort. We do have a
This is a tree fort where you guys are right now. This is like my little tree fort.
No, we have a full-on lab and real office and all that good stuff. But as far as a clean room, that's not really necessary with the organic material that we utilize. We have the hoods and things of that nature when we're doing the tissue culture.
Or the microbial.
Yeah, and the microbial. But as far as in the actual lab itself, that's not really. It's overkill, and I would imagine not many labs actually would do that. To be honest, actually have like a clean room where there's HEPA filtration and showers and whatnot you take in and out, that type of stuff. Not many labs would do that.
Right, and I mean,
There's a certain standard that's required, and some standards aren't necessary.
Mm-hmm. Some are just overkill, and it is. I mean, it's grown in the dirt. It's an organic product, right?
yeah, I mean, if it's grown outdoors in proper conditions, I mean, you want it to grow directly in the ground. I mean, that's always the nicest feeling. Unfortunately, most places not, but you guys are seeing more greenhouses being developed, like Wilcox Farms. Those
Yeah.
big ones kind of made everybody see the light, I'm sure, and go like, "Oh, that's pretty big." I mean, we gotta. Is there anybody trying to compete with them, or there's anybody?
Yeah,
like,
there's a very large facility in Snowflake as well. Those guys have invested obviously a great deal of money, but even more so to that.
Did they actually build it for this thing, or was
I'm
it
not
another
sure if it was
conversion?
existing beforehand or not.
Like the same?
I'm pretty sure the Wilcox one was
Oh,
existing.
that was
prior.
definitely
Yeah.
a conversion.
And I'm not 100% on the Copper State one, but it is good to see, knowing some of these guys now personally, though, that they have the right approach. I'm seeing a good mentality and a good, their approach and their thoroughness, makes me feel a little bit more comfortable. Because as we all worry, is that people will come in with the wrong mentality and the wrong intentions, and we're gratefully not seeing that so far, and we've had the opportunity to get to work with both of them, and it's pretty cool to see where they're going.
Yeah, I think it's cool to see the different states approach too, and I mean, it's kind of falling into line where new states kind of know it's easier when you're looking at all these examples. I mean, now we have all sorts of examples. We have Washington, which has completely gone reversed on certain things, and like at first being super cool. Some states like here too was cool, now it's lame. You know what I mean? So you look at how the future is going to be, and if you look towards Colorado, that's bullshit. So you don't want to do that. But at the same time, most places are going to look, because the problem is everyone's looking at the money now, and it's really obvious that it's going in that direction. And you're like, okay, we're not, like they look at the home growers as competition for the dispensaries. And the reality, like here, did you listen last week to Jessica at all? Because she was talking about how like here they are butchering the whole breeding. They had this new license they were coming out with for breeders, which was like, oh, okay, perk your ears up. And they said like up to 500 plants, but you have to go through 2 years of waiting for,
Wow.
and in that process you can have 12 plants. I was like, well, how are you going to do it?
What's the point?
What is that's like saying you're not a breeder for 2 years until you could be a breeder? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
It seems like they're following the hemp model where you need to have certified stock or something along those lines. I think I've had this saying for at least the last 6 months, but I think that there's so much to learn about the other states of what they've done, not just from a growing standpoint and business standpoint, but from regulation standpoint. And if Arizona's smart, and we do have maybe the opportunity to fucking get it right. And that would be really ironic for Arizona. Let's be honest. We're talking about kind of a backward state.
And I'm glad it didn't roll over. I mean, I'm glad that Arizona is still medical, and if not, I think what's down there right now would have been taken away. And,
Yeah, the model itself, I think, is very advantageous for the growers and for breeders, and it allows it allows you guys the flexibility. At least the people down there allows them the flexibility to do some pretty amazing things. And now that we're working on legislation to amend some of the things that weren't necessarily right or weren't brought along in 2010 the way we would have hoped them to be. I think we're fixing some of those, and now we've had the opportunity to learn from states that it wasn't necessarily that they're wrong. It's just that they were the first ones to have to do it. So obviously there's growing pains in that. So we've learned from what didn't work and what caused undue harm, undue stress, and undue restriction, and what had snuffed out craft, what had snuffed out medical. Some of those things have really deeply been impacted in a lot of these states, and we want to avoid that from happening if at all possible.
I think as far as Arizona goes, seeing the plant and being a student and traveling and just really looking at how the plant grows, down there, the resin production that I've seen in Wilcox, and the way that the plants express is just phenomenal underneath the sunshine. There's something about the air, and when the rainstorms roll through, it's perfect.
Nice to watch.
It's quite different than the Pacific Northwest.
There's a type of growing that we haven't talked about that my husband and I ran a grow, and they wanted to start growing outside in the middle of summertime. And we chuckled and said, okay, you're going to take a greenhouse, veg, and then all of a sudden throw it outside in the Arizona in July. So there's another way maybe we can go about this. And you guys are probably familiar with some of these grows, but you could do retractable. So then you do have that nice, it's a beautiful hybrid between doing a greenhouse and an outdoor grow, and you still are utilizing the sun, which is free in Arizona. Hello, you can add some supplemental lighting. You can still do blackout.
Yeah.
You can still actually, any kind of, in the right way, stress for these plants, because it's a stress response. The metabolites, all of the phytochemicals that we care about is all based off of some sort of stress. And so it is kind of a unique approach that hasn't really gained a lot of traction, and I think a lot of it has to do with just being able to do that research and have that experience and figure out your cycles. I mean, how many times can you do that based off of lights, and how many grows can you get into a season? It's going to be different even in a retractable than it would be outdoor grow, because you can have some of that protection. And I've been there when we've had the haboobs, those big, the dust storms.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh shit, close faster, come on, pull those. But and the plants were absolutely fine.
Sure. They would have been completely and utterly, they were covered in dust, obviously.
Absolutely.
Even if they didn't get wrecked.
And all kinds of contaminants and
then if you have a
microbial.
good storm in the right way where it's not going to be hazardous, just open that shit up and let it just naturally wash off and clean with the rainwater, because that's good, pure water, versus even the well water, depending on where you're at, can be an issue. And so it's a nice way to naturally do that. And if you know how to cultivate in that way as a grower and be able to adapt and ask those questions and be like, okay, so again, going back to what we were talking about earlier, where am I at? How can I best utilize where I'm at?
I mean, it all depends. Like if you're in Alaska or something, then
not going to be.
You get like 3 months or something like that, and you don't get the full. Can't utilize as much, and then
probably produce some good veg though.
Yeah,
good diameter there.
I mean, but everyone adjusts, and somebody figures it out. And out here, sometimes putting plants out in July is actually, I mean, you can still pull it off. They'll be a lot smaller, but they'll guarantee, they'll still pull in, they'll still come in. And there's a lot of combinations, and people, the good growers work their area properly and then understand it. And some people, you can watch them put them out really early and think they're going to get a bigger plant, and then you just laugh when they get hailed on, because didn't you know it hails every single time right around the 1st of fucking June? You have to almost wait till right after that, then put them out, because here's like a disaster.
Or you could say, is there another way we can do it and protect ourselves from the hail?
Right.
Retractable roofs.
She's
a sales. She's definitely on the retractable sales.
I don't believe there's any stake.
I like it. I like it myself.
Something about growing. I don't know. I just can't stop learning.
Yeah, no. Here's a good place for that. Also, we have 300 days of sun a year, and even unless you're up high, it's obviously colder. But down here, when I first moved here, I noticed it too. People were like, I was like, dude, it's like 50 degrees out, and it's the middle of the winter, and it's just have these little weird ups and downs.
Yeah.
And they can be like, we never tell anybody, just like kind of like, oh, it's really cold, but it's hardly in Denver itself, but in the rest of, there's areas, of course, the higher up you go. But
Always little microclimates.
yeah, and then like obviously, Oregon is always key. Whenever I land there, like I'm like, man, everything here is so lush. This is like, it just grows everything, on the side of the highway. It's like things are just growing, and like definitely, it's a beautiful sort of special spot. New England's like that too, in spots where you're just like, there's certain areas and you're just like, they get that extra couple weeks, and that's why we have this guy Ron Wallace, who we should actually do shout outs in a minute, but he's one of our sponsors, and he's the guy who grows those giant pumpkins, and he's like in that perfect spot, and people are like, but you get 2 extra weeks, and it's like, hey, it's what happens, and it just happens to be everyone else has cut him off the vine and they're ready to go. He's still got the last couple weeks at 50 pounds a day at the point when they're really, really
Just packing it on.
yeah. So it's one of those like
Go outside, look around, like, no, I'm good today.
and maybe on those last couple of days, it's probably like they're not putting on as much, but still, even if they're putting on 10 pounds a day for 2 extra weeks, you get an extra 140.
He's winning. Those,
It's that 140 pounds got me over the edge, but he was already doing 2 tons. He was already doing 2,000 pounds. A ton. But it's like, that's ridiculous. And it was all rhizosphere, just working the right rhizosphere, and that's his whole game, Like he's like thinking about that.
Find the right genetics and manipulate that.
Oh, genetics, obviously, but also just he knows it's all about that. It's like it's on. He has all mycorrhizal products. Should we pull on their? Should we pull the? Might as well. I'm already did half.
Let's do shout outs. I have our other guest ready to call in, and we'll
there
get
you
into
go.
our topic of the day.
We'll do the shout outs right now. We'll start with Mr. Wallace because we just were talking about him, and the Wallace Organic Wonder, from Rhode Island. He's got the best accent. We love having him on the show. He's got that thick New England accent. I grew up in Rhode Island when I was a kid, so it's always like the guy who chased me off the fucking lawn or hey, get off my pumpkin, that guy. So, but he's awesome. Check him out. Check those pumpkins out. Check out. Well, that ain't the pumpkin.
I love the tomato there.
Right.
The tomatoes are 10 pounds.
Your head.
10 pounders. But you can get all his products directly from him at his website, which is
It's going hunting and harvesting.
WallaceWow.com, and he might, if you give him a letter, it's great to talk to him. But he'll contact you direct. He'll help you out. He's got some great genetics, obviously. I think he was telling us up to $500 per seed. Bam,
Really?
That's the market.
Wow.
You gotta
They're reserving some space for pumpkins.
normally about $50 a seed, but still, there's a couple of special ones out there that are just like sought after. So you can contact them direct, get some of their great products, all mycorrhizal products. Like I said, a lot of rhizosphere, cool little regenerators and stuff. So give them a shout. And New Millennium, local guys here. Incredible, easy to use formula, seasonal based. So, spring, summer, winter, fall, all those things kind of, don't mix them all up too much like I just did, but, a little less mixing up would be good. But if you run them in those orders and whenever you're feeling it, you can kind of give them their fulvic product that we really love. And they've got a couple new ones too, a new carb, which one's that called? Was that the Carbonara or something like that? Carbonara. Yeah, of course. And we'll get them on the show in the next couple of weeks and see what they're doing. But they go to newmillenniumnutrients.com and check out the website. They have all. It's brand new. It's all fresh. It all works, and it's they have the calculator. So if you can just put in what you're doing, you can figure it all out. You don't have to waste much money, and you can contact them direct, and they can ship it to you and all that good stuff. And or find somebody local. Just tell them, say, "What the fuck? You don't have this on the shelf? What kind of shop is this?" Kick the thing over when you walk out, and just then go back, and hopefully it's there, and you don't get arrested. That's kind of the idea. Whatever, just ask or check the store finder. That actually helps too. Incredibles. the best edibles here in Colorado, now in Nevada and Cali, and moving on to Mass, I think, or something. All over the place. All over the place. Covering America with all their delicious, lovely I can't say candy. Adult snacks that
Get some samples.
adult medicated
Adult trick-or-treats.
things that you chew on. Yes, it's definitely your time to take care of yourself. You got your kids are going to be like having so much candy. You better go buy these for yourself and just go chill out. And
Your
be
kids
like,
will love you. You're not stealing their candy.
you're going to be an exact opposite of them. They're going to be jumping around like maniacs, and you're just going to be chilling out, like watching Netflix and going like, how many fucking episodes of this shit did I watch?
Yeah, but sometimes you need that. You need that like extra patience, and if that gets you there, get you there.
Oh, of course, you got to. You have to call in your inner Yoda. Is what I was listening to this therapist kind of kid thing. That was like, and she was all like, "Yeah, you gotta get your inner Yoda," and I was like, "That's easy. I do that every day with my kid." I'm just like, "Really? Is that what you want to do?" I'm like, "I can't
sounds
believe
awesome.
I'm never." Yeah, exactly. I'm like, "What are you thinking?" But Incredibles. You go to iloveincredibles.com if you want to check out their store finder, check out where they're at. Go if you're here in Colorado, you can find them at every single dispensary that I've ever been into, I think, and like I said, everywhere in America soon. And you can also check out for their extracts, and if you're really into making extracts, you can check out their incredible extractor machine. Anyway, and then Build a Soil. BuildASoil.com this is our most dedicated. I was thinking about the other day. I was like, these guys are the fucking most dedicated sponsors we've ever had. They have never failed us. They have come through every single month. I'll be like, how is that shit still on? KTI, how's it working? And then I go like, oh yeah, Jeremy did it. He kept it rolling. He kept the show rolling.
Jeremy's awesome.
We've had almost every single sponsor drop out on us. It's amazing. But the couple have hung in. It's just because, they're like, these guys. They do something, they make a bunch of money, and then they get like a bunch of good contacts, and then they forget, and then they're like, these guys don't deserve $500. Forget about it. So then we have to like drop them. We broke up with you. That's what we usually say. That's our style. We dropped you because you guys sucked. I think.
It was you, not me.
No, we never said one thing bad about all these people that left us, but they all left us. So anybody who left us, you just know they left us. That's all. They left us. We definitely would have we're like, please hang in there. We know it. Now we usually vet our people pretty well. We didn't have to vet Jeremy at all because his shit is on point.
Build a Soil.
Has always been on point. I think we have helped him a lot because everybody listens to this show is like about 80% of them are no-till kind of mentality. They might not be doing it, but they want to. And
Right.
He's got all that product that you need to do that, and he's also got IPM products and just hard to get stuff.
Hard to find stuff.
Hard to find little, he's like that, like, oh, wow, he got home dehydrated. He's got all the dehydrated stuff for you for a space.
Yeah?
Yeah, he's got dehydrated coconut and dehydrated, like, good.
Yep.
You can, like, while you're feeding the plants, you're like, this is great. I love this stuff. So that's what I like about half his stuff is like stuff I would want to eat. So I'm like, dude, this is great. Except for, there's definitely a few products I'd be like, probably shouldn't eat that. But in general, you go to buildasoil.com or you go to 855-877-SOIL if you want to talk to somebody. Everybody there is super knowledgeable, which is good. We've had them.
Yep. He'll talk to you.
Two went through there and double checked. You were there with that trip or no? They all went down to the Montrose or whatever. No. Apparently, everybody was on point. Everybody there was like, knew what's up. Wasn't like you were like, it wasn't that going on. It was a very good crew, and Jeremy is on point. He's like the best of the best. And we have a lot of shows. If you want to listen to, if you would actually want to go back and listen to some of our old shows, which I never do hardly. I'm gonna one day. I'm gonna be like, oh my god, I got so many shows to listen to. It's gonna be crazy. I'm gonna be cringing. Forget about it.
Yeah.
They're done.
Got it.
That's what I'm talking about. See, those guys.
Yep.
Those kind of guys. They're in. They're out. Fly by day, fly by night, whatever it is. Fly by night is what these guys are because they ain't gonna last. If you don't do the Adam Dunn show,
Gone.
Done. You're done, right? That's it. You've been done.
This is why we're.
You're good.
Oh,
You're in.
that's your bumper sticker.
Seeds here now.
Oh yeah, this is the big guy. This is the big guy. He should be calling in anyway because he's probably just sitting at home forgetting it's Friday like usual.
Right.
Seeds here now. Seeds here now. Seeds here now. Come on, come on.
Seeds here now.
Seeds where?
Seeds here now.
Where are they? Where are the seeds?
They're here.
When?
Now.
Oh, there you go. We
you
did
go.
it. Boom.
That was it.
That's how we do this
Yeah,
show.
James.
That was orchestrated.
It's
right
really
there.
orchestrated. You like that? It doesn't take much. It's a very
I wish
easy.
everyone could have seen the face expression now.
Now. Too bad the camera was at the wrong angle. We didn't quite get that one, but it was sincere. It was a sincere, like he knew, he thought. Yeah, it was Pavlov's dog. It was the Pavlov's dog of commercials. Check out what they got. Well, forget about the gold standard. We know that. Everybody knows it's the gold standard. Everybody knows they're the best place for exotic. Everybody knows they're the best place for all American breeders, straight from the breeder to you, basically through them, but at the same time, it's straight from the breeder. And if you have a problem with it, just fucking tell them, and they'll give you new shit. That's the best deal ever. And on top of that, they have a Seedsaholics, and you go there and check out their auction site. And then I'm sure there's a whole bunch of auctions for the fire victims. I'm sure in NorCal already up there.
Good stuff.
And so that's help support that way with some fine genetics to help you, help them, help you, help them. Well, all that. Reciprocal help, basically, is what you're trying to do. So what we're trying to say here, and but you can go to seedsaholics.com via seedsherenow.com, and you can check out all the auction sites, or you can go to directly to the different breeders and see what they got available. And I think there's always good specials, obviously. And if you go through the Adam Dunn Show and you just keep saying Adam Dunn Show, Adam Dunn Show, Adam Dunn Show somehow all over the thing, just say it, then he'll know.
Say, I've been done.
Yeah, it's a done deal. I want the done deal. I want the done deal now.
Done deal.
I want the done deal. I want the done deal. And that'll usually help. That helps. It helps. We just try it everywhere. I tried it at gas stations. It just doesn't work always. But can I have the done deal? They'd be like, what? And be like, what? Takes a while. But
And then brought to you by Sauce.
the sauce. And
sponsor.
sponsor with the
Sponsor by
Propane Jane?
Propane Jane.
Propane Jane sponsored.
Some other assortments of the old Dirty Diesel.
Oh, we had some Geek Farm. We had some Geek Farm.
Yep.
We had a little bit. We had a little bit of Geek Farm, which is
This is
awesome.
the new Homegrown Natural Wonders Old Dirty Diesel. It's the Oregon Diesel by Doctor Who from Odie, who's right out over there.
Right
Make him
behind
come
that
in
door,
here. Yeah.
just hiding.
Yeah, like that.
He's the least loud of everybody, though, so he's usually not too loud. Is he coming in? Who's coming in?
I have our other caller here. We can get him on.
Oh, yeah, get a
But,
caller,
let's lead in. So
yeah.
I thought
Let's do it. Oh, and wait, books from where?
well, this is just a book that
Just found a book.
concept book where she loves this book. I
Okay.
think it's a great book.
Well, yeah, this way.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Right.
Yes, please. Show it.
Plants from test tubes.
Very good read.
This is the tissue culture show.
Deep
so.
sigh. Am I sensing hesitation?
No, it's one of those things. Like I'm like I don't want to get. I'm like I want it. I don't want it. I want it. I don't want it. I want it. I don't want it. Kind of one of those.
Let me help you out here.
If it does all the things that I would want it to do, which I've heard it does, which I'm going to see if this caller can tell us the realities of it when he does. You told him the times, right? Or you told him the phone number.
He's waiting.
Okay, just
I
tell
was
him,
just
give a
waiting for
call.
sponsors.
We'll take a couple dabs. We do the sponsors. Yeah, secret sponsors.
Let's
No
get
secret
some
sponsors.
more background on her. I'd love to hear some of the stuff. What led you into tissue culturing in general, and what drove you away from tissue culture and then moving to cannabis. So,
Oh, yeah.
I'd love to hear about that.
Well, tissue culture, I got started in my undergrad at the U of A, and working with orchids was the first plant, and working with Arizona native, actually. It's an endangered species. And hi.
This guy's on point, man.
So this is Eric Goldberg. Goes by Microprop420 on Instagram.
All right. Eric,
Hey, what's going on?
how's it going? You hear us?
Hello?
Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
Hi.
As long as you can hear us, then we
I
are.
hear you. Can I listen to the show online? Or
No,
will I
don't
be able to
listen.
hear
Just,
over the phone?
just
You
turn
can come
the
back and listen later.
You can
Hey.
leave. Yeah, just turn the volume down because you know how it is. We'll end up with it. Triple echo.
Yeah.
Feedback.
I can hear it. I can hear you. I hear you. I listen to
See.
the show online. No.
Oh, we have another
There
caller?
we go. You can hear it.
Is this James?
Beep, beep.
All right.
Is this second caller? So we have a second caller. Who's second caller?
Hey, this is Jordan from Central Hydro Club in Rhode Island.
Hey, Jordan, what's going down?
Say what up to Adam. What up?
What's happening? What's happening? How's your weekend? You got the big thing in Providence going on?
Yeah, we just finished the High Times Cup.
Yeah, but isn't there something else happening this weekend now? Like a Providence something?
Oh,
We-
yeah, we got the New England Cannabis Convention coming up.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah, that thing. How was your cup? You survived. You didn't get in trouble. That's a good job. Always as usual.
Yep, yeah, no trouble.
So you had meth and
Yeah,
Redman at your spot?
Just Redman, yeah.
Oh, just Redman.
Method Man rebooked something else.
Gotcha. Well, that's good. No trouble in that little tiny town. It's always an accomplishment, I'd have to say. And working with High Times and coming out alive is always a good thing too. You didn't get in any trouble
Yeah.
on their part.
That was great to have it go good.
Well, nice one. So I got another guest on the line. So get the fuck off my line. No, but I'll talk.
Shout it out, motherfucker. We listening.
All right.
Shout it out.
Thanks for
All right.
listening.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Organic mood.
Of course.
Awesome.
Hey, no, of course. And congrats on everything. And
Organic
I'll be seeing
moves.
you guys like on the 14th or something like that. What's the date? 14th?
Yeah, we'll see you in a month. Cannabis All Stars, 18th and 19th.
That's it, 18th and 19th. I don't know. I get it all confused. But yeah, I'll see you guys next month. Sounds good. 5th annual All Stars. I'm amazed.
Fifth annual.
I'm impressed.
We're doing it.
Yeah. Sounds good, bro. I'll talk to you
Word.
soon.
Peace
All
out.
right, cool, guys.
All right, peace.
All right, peace.
You have the best laugh.
All right.
All right, Eric. So we're back.
Yep.
We're back.
All right, Eric, are you with us?
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, I'm here.
Right.
All right. So we were just
Good to talk to you. But feel free to tell Mr. Wallace that I'll take any proven seed donations. The crazy thing is $500 a seed if you think about how many seeds a giant pumpkin makes. It's kind
Right.
yeah.
We're in the wrong business.
Yeah,
Right.
but the weird part was
It's
is
a
that
lot of
it was a
seeds.
really like disappointing amount of seeds for such a big pumpkin. Though you were really like, that's it, like yep, that's it. It was like
Well, and the demand for giant pumpkin seeds probably isn't as
No.
anywhere near the demand for cannabis seeds.
Not quite.
either.
Not
Anyway,
quite
yeah,
there.
a lot of
Probably
people know
fair
me
guess.
as Micro Prop 420, Eric Goldberg, long time fan of the show. Got into cannabis via the Grateful Dead in the early 90s. And, that's kind of when my dance with the cannabis community started, developed a deep love of the plant. I've been engaged in its cultivation and breeding for the last 25 years. Science background, I went to the Evergreen State College in Washington, got a BS, dabbled in tissue culture, as well as I worked in a bacteriophage genetics lab. That's how I got into molecular genetics. Went to grad school at Penn State, have a master's degree in plant pathology, where my thesis was focused on plant microbe interaction. Basically, I used molecular genetic techniques to investigate how plants see microbes respond to pathogens. In the meantime, I've gotten into the quote industry for the last couple of years as a consultant, using my background in plant pathology to develop strategic IPM biocontrol-based strategies for, I've worked with the top tier 3 producer in Washington, $2.4 million a month. Yeah, so more recently, people know me from working in tissue culture, Instagram on Microprop 420, and I was really lucky to spend, I managed to cross paths with people that were crazy enough to want to get into cannabis tissue culture. Of course, most people in the industry, right off the bat, they want to archive everything, and they see tissue culture as this sort of magic, storage system, which really, I have to talk these people down usually.
Right.
One of the weird things is Hope mentioned orchids, and tissue culture was kind of started in the orchid community because it's impossible to breed or propagate orchids without a aseptic technique. Cannabis, on the other hand, is really easy, as we know, to propagate conventionally. And so I think the angle that I usually try to come from, and what got me into it, was being a consultant for these places and realizing the catastrophic situations that people get in on a commercial scale with cannabis, just from basic pests like spider bites, broad mites, powdery mildew, etc.
right.
one of the biggest things people need is clean plant stock. And so that led me to micropropagation.
And that was like
I've seen some pretty interesting stuff.
and that was kind of like my golden ticket part of it, which was like, okay, well, the one thing I do like about it is the fact that anything that you produce should be, cleaned of any disease that it has. But at the same time, I'm also thinking like, well, I carry some stuff around for 28 years, and it's been through hell and back, and it's like at the same time, you still hang on to it because it's your original thing, and then at the same time, you'd love to clean it all up, but then at the same time, you don't know
if it's possible.
Yeah.
Right, and one of the things that people observed in micropropagation over decades was that the plants that go through the micropropagation process successfully, and not every species takes to it at all, they observed a rejuvenation, a return to a juvenile state, and an increased vigor. And subsequently, we've learned that there's a molecular basis for that. There's the DNA methylation. Basically, it's epigenetics. That negative environment, pathogen pressure, even like reversing plants from flowering back to veg. All of this has an impact on what genes a plant expresses, right? So it's not changing the DNA itself; it's changing how the plant uses its DNA, and that's based on what the plant perceives of the environment. The rub is that this stuff is really hard to reverse traditionally. Like when it can last for it's inheritable in the plant's progeny, and it can last for like 8 generations. The neat thing is micropropagation. We don't totally understand why it happens, but we understand that it is effective in resetting the methylation and the histone the changes to the histones, so the proteins that the plant's DNA is wound up on. Part of this is because what people don't understand is for plants to grow, the cells have to divide, and every time the cells divide, the DNA has to be wound back up into chromosomes and then distributed into the daughter cells. And so I like to think of it in lay terms. I always tell people the way I look at it is it's like when you move, you've got boxes of your stuff, and there's some stuff that has your dishes from your great aunt or her Christmas decorations, and that stuff sits in your garage the last 3 times you moved without getting open. And it's sort of like the genes that the plant has decided that it doesn't need. Then there's other stuff like your toiletries and your dishes and pots and pans are the last thing you pack and the first thing you unpack. And that's kind of what the plant cells do as well. They say, okay, well, originally you selected plants for smell, vigor, bag appeal, whatever. And over the course of a decade or two, you expose them to all these different stresses, and it convinces the plant that what you originally selected for isn't as important as surviving heat stress or drought stress.
I remember.
Well, and if you take a plant, if you take a plant that's in stress, and if you're doing conventional propagation, you're going to see a lot of people talk about genetic drift. It's not a drift. It's a plant that is in stress when you take those cuttings. And there's no free lunch. You've heard that many, many times. So if you take a plant that is in stress and you're propagating it versus if you take a mother plant that's been well cared for and you take cuttings, from your own experience, you see a difference in the vigor. And if you
even seeds generated will also this also happens in breeding. The effect of bad epigenetics affects the progeny.
And one way I like to think about epigenetics, and it's an oversimplification, but again, it is true to a certain extent. So if you think about yourself and where we are now, right? And if you start to see these age spots or your skin starting to get kind of loose and saggy, there's a half-life also of certain proteins that exist for a certain period of time. And so when you have the ability to think of yourself as a child, you're genetically still you, right? You're still you. You're a lot more energy. Your son has a lot of energy, right? And ideas, and there's certain things that has not bombarded his little brain yet to create a different mindset or to have, this, whatever this shit is that's happening here during age, right? And so if there is a way to get back to that really excited, rambunctious, but it's still genetically you. That's a lot of times a nice way to also think about.
I mean, the thing to remember is that cannabis isn't a perennial plant, and it's a short season annual, and it just does not have the molecular machinery to reset these epigenetics the way like a deciduous plant that loses its leaves every season and comes back and is designed to live for hundreds of years. This plant is just not. And I think micropropagation might, interestingly enough, be a way to kind of get around that. The other thing is, when you see these plants, like I personally have the Williams Wonder that I've had for over 15 years, and the person I got it from has had it for over 20. There's clearly some cannabis strains have some sort of mechanisms for increased stability over long periods of time, whereas others we've seen strains come and go in a matter of 5 years where they just become unstable and no one wants to grow them. Kind of like the cherry pie is a good example of a strain that probably was phenomenal when someone first cracked the seed, but late, now as it comes around, everyone knows, week 2 of flowering, you better be picking off male flowers or you're going to have an unanticipated breeding project on your hands.
Yeah, yet another cherry pie cross.
That's how you know you have the real one, right?
Yeah,
Sperm
I mean,
balls.
it's great breeding material, but...
Well, it's going to be interesting as we talk about some of the seeds that have not been grown because it wasn't ideal for doing the closet grow or was not bred to be just THC producing and 24-hour light, this kind of stuff. So it will be really nice to actually start seeing some of, you were mentioning your seeds, and might be a way to be able to work with some of that product.
Right.
We also know that certain viruses can live in the seed coat for decades and decades and live and be an active virus in low temperature or hot temperature. It doesn't matter. And so it's a nice, safe way to pop seeds.
What's your take
way.
on TMV, Hope? I'm curious.
Yeah,
there's
good
a lot
question.
I stay out of that conversation normally.
But it's
because when
so
you bring
rare.
it up, there's a lot of dogma.
So rare.
In my experience, from what I understand, that
I'll show you
cannabis
pictures.
definitely can be infected by TMV. But
Absolutely.
most
I've
plants
worked
are
with it, Eric,
asymptomatic.
actually. I'm so glad that you brought
Yeah,
up that question
so-
because from a
Yeah,
scientific
there was a
standpoint,
paper published
I've
where they
seen it.
infected.
It's crazy cool.
It's the most
but
over-
from
it's
a
the most-
grower,
Yeah,
it's
basically
terrifying.
cannabis.
What's the
Yeah.
most it's the most like overly thought thing, but the reality is usually not. So many people say, "Oh, you got TMV." It's like the
What's
first
wrong
thing
with my plant?
Like something's wrong, TMV.
Cow
It's
man.
like,
Well,
what do
I
you
think
mean?
there's definitely plants, and then you can have complexes of diseases too, where a plant that is carrying the TMV virus might be asymptomatic until it gets alfalfa mosaic virus, and now you will see disease symptoms.
So
But
yeah,
one
if
of
you
those
have a
viruses
combination,
alone
if you
might
have
not
one
be-
virus, you may not see it, or a viroid, you may not see a phenotype's not going to affect your yield. But now all of a sudden you get one or two of those, and then you get a stressor from a whitefly outbreak, let's say, for example. Now you've just really crossed a threshold, and now you're going to start seeing symptoms that you maybe didn't see before. The other thing that is different about certain viruses is it systemic, meaning, or just like powdery mildew, right? And so you know that if you have brushed a leaf because you weren't
Well,
careful.
powdery mildew isn't systemic. That's another great
Yep.
thing to bring up. Well, we have the science crew on board.
Yeah, it's
But-
funny. It's funny
I
too
always
because
get
I
that.
had
Powdery
yeah.
mildew is not systemic. There's
It's
two
ca-
species in cannabis. There's Sphaerophyca macularis and Levolutorica. Sphaerophyca macularis is kind of superficial, but Levolutorica is like an endophyte. So it penetrates through the stomata and
Yeah.
colonizes the mesophyll. So people think it's just systemic because it's hard to reach with most. That's really the biggest reason for the use of micropropagation in cannabis right now is that, like powdery mildew, you can't use myclobutanol, which is a great, you can spray it on strawberries on the day of harvest, and that's the baby food crop. So it's obviously safe. Of course, the combustion product is possibly, is dangerous.
You know it's
so we
bad
can't
when you
use
open it up. You just go, "Oof,
But-
that's
But starting with clean plants is paramount in an industry where you literally cannot use any modern agricultural chemicals. And I have actually successfully micropropagated healthy cultures from powdery mildew infested plants. And I think the reason why micropropagation, one, it's the material, the minute amount of material that you're using, the meristematic tissue, isn't really what powdery mildew infects, combined with the fact that in vitro, the micropropagated plants don't have a fully developed vascular system, cuticle, or even stomata necessarily because of the high humidity conditions. Cannabis plants, all plants have plasticity, so they adapt to their environment. And the way they adapt to the in vitro environment is to not develop stomata. So by having one or two passes, one or two subcultures, you pretty much grow the plants out of the powdery mildew without having to use any chemicals.
Or you throw it away.
But that, yeah.
No, I mean the thing is, it's people think of it as like a silver bullet a lot of times. Like, yeah, this is gonna be so easy. It's like it's not easy at all. It takes a long time, and
it depends on the goal. And I when I work with the various clients, what's the goal? Is the goal to actually rescue genetics? Is that the goal? Is the goal to develop a germ? A library, and so you can store your genetics down.
They're apples and oranges.
But that's what I'm saying.
That's interesting.
But we're in
most
agreement.
People's interest in it, I found, is originally people want to archive stuff, but they also want you to clean up stock. And when you're taking sick plants and micropropagating, you might only get like 20% healthy cultures out the other side. But if you're trying to archive things, I call it, it's called stage 0. In tissue culture, it's how the plants are staged going into it. And actually, what I found I've tissue cultured about 30 strains, a couple of hundred plants through the process. And what I found is that everyone thinks that you need a different recipe for every strain, and I don't think that's really true. I think that most strains are happy on a basic recipe. There's a few outliers that need a little more fine tuning, but what people don't realize is how important the conditions of the plants are that you're taking your material from. Even just where on the plant you take your material. Anyone who takes cuttings knows that there can be a really big difference between cuttings taken from vigorously growing top parts of the plant versus more slow growing bottom parts of the plants. And same thing happens in tissue culture. And I think when people do little bits of tissue culture, they see one strain doing well and another strain not, and they think that's because of the media. And I think a lot of times it's just because of the health of the plants that they started with.
Yeah, you have certain types of plants that are more successful, like fatter, depending on the leaf type, or as far as like thickness and thinness and
vigorous, easy to grow plants. Blue Dream, Gorilla Glue, super
like
easy to micropropagate.
Kind of
harder to grow plants.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
well,
it's really. I mean, micropropagation is.
Same as normal. Same as normal in a sense, as far as easy ones.
If you take the young, tender, younger on the bottom part of the plant, those, in my experience, seem to be much more vigorous in culture than if you take more woodier stems.
Right.
Doesn't mean it's not possible, but also a different time of day, I've noticed a difference. And I think that might have to do with
light levels, nutrients. The watering, irrigation cycle, all of that I've observed as being fair, almost more influential than, whether you're using, PDZ or BAP isn't as important as, it is, but it's not as important as the health of the material.
Yep. And I think getting back to, the goal is this going to be the silver bullet to everything? It depends on the goal. If you want to be a breeder and maybe actually think about different approaches and speeding up the time to breed, there's some very, very cool ways to be able to use culture to do that. So that would be one focus. That would be one goal. If you're a grower,
that's my main interest is using it as a jumping off point of biotech. You can create a true breeding plant by a tissue culture in a matter of months versus, in cannabis, a true breeding line. Sure, Arabidopsis, it self-pollinates. You can create a true breeding line with one plant and one, it's very simple. Cannabis, because they have separate sexes and because we can't determine the traits that are valuable in the males, it becomes really cumbersome to try to breed for traits without using marker-assisted selection.
Absolutely.
Or some of the tricks that you can use. So basically, it's been done. That's the really interesting thing about cannabis, and the exciting thing and also the scary thing is that because of the legal status, there's been such a lag in cannabis research that there's just there's so much low-hanging fruit you kind of have to walk, hunched over. So I think we're going to see some crazy stuff happen real soon. I'd love to talk with you, Hope, down the line about how we can collaborate on some of these more bleeding edge biotech projects that obviously producers, cannabis producers aren't going to be able to, pay for that research, and without academic support.
Yep, I'm absolutely excited to do that, and I'm excited to meet you as well, Eric. I've followed actually your Instagram. I think you're doing really great stuff, and I think that there's going to be a need to do the research and development and let growers use their space for growing. Mm-hmm. So I think that being able to still work with the plants and then still be able to do the research is what motivates me very much. And then this industry, it's a new idea, tissue culture, to this industry, and that's because you guys were living in one way. And now that you're able to come out, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit, but how do you start? Do you have time to do that? Do you have the space to do that? Do you have the money and the funds to do that? And when it comes to tissue culture, and that's why I say it depends about the goal is the goal to produce 1,000 clones a week so you're meeting your clone orders? Again, that's a different goal.
And that's not a good angle to do, is it?
You can pay someone minimum wage to produce clones. That many clones. That's the thing. Micropropagation is usually relegated to difficult to propagate crops, which cannabis just is not that. And realistic, like I go to on consults all the time. People want tissue culture labs, and I find myself talking producers out of it all the time. It's just like unless you need 50,000 plants a month. Why? I think at some point definitely we're going to see
these big producers
the
probably
outsourcing
will.
of clones.
And that'll come quicker than you think, obviously.
Well, I think
it will. And in the horticulture industry, in my experience, this is, you buy, sometimes they do their own propagation, but a lot of times they're actually purchasing their orders, right? And you can have a breeding house.
I think it'll be like the strawberry industry, which is. Strawberries are very similar to cannabis in that strawberries are also very easy to propagate traditionally, but they're prone to a bunch of diseases that even though you can grow them perennially, we grow them as short-season annuals just like cannabis. They suffer from botrytis, they suffer from spider mites and powdery mildew. And in California, I think there's a great model already. There's a publicly funded lab that hosts about 50 species of strawberries.
At UC
Tissue
Davis?
culture and provides those plants with it. And then there's a privately funded lab that has like another couple of hundred. And, I think we're going to see that in cannabis where, especially in states like Washington, where you're limited to canopy space, you can start to convince people that even the numbers add up to outsource your clones, right? To get your clones from a nursery where they're using tissue culture to produce disease-free stock that has increased vigor. And I've seen it myself. These plants literally grow twice as fast out of micropropagation. And there's data to support that. They have higher photosynthetic rates as well.
And then, the silver bullet, a lot of this research
the legal status makes it difficult.
Yeah, I think the research
and the legal status makes it difficult to visualize a large nursery distributing clones, but sooner or later it will happen. I think, it might, I just think that it's easier for a nursery who's, selling clones by the truckload to commercial facilities for them to fund and run a tissue culture lab than it is for someone who only needs, a couple of thousand plants every few months.
I recently been talking to a group who's looking to do exactly that with hemp and CBD, and they're bringing in just making millions of tissue cultured clones and pumping them out across the country, and they're planning on doing that by next year.
Right.
And they have the funding.
How do they travel? Do they travel well?
I don't know.
Coolers,
right,
or what are you gonna do?
Right. That's and that comes back to the whole reason why I kind of wanted to do this show and bring all you guys together is Adam and I have been talking about tissue culture for some time, and people are always asking us at panels or just asking us in general about tissue culture, and we always just laugh and we're like, like everybody always tells us, oh, we just built this room for $70,000, and what are you gonna do with it?
Yeah.
And it's
think about all the clones you could already make. $70,000. You've could have made 1 million clones already done.
I'd make it a medical kitchen.
Right. And you've seen a lot of people trying to do it, and nobody. You can get roots, you can get a little bit of growth, but making a plant inside of a vessel and adapting it to a new environment.
Oh, it's an art.
It is an art form. Absolutely.
An art to it.
I disagree that
it's like growing. It's growing on a really tiny scale. You're growing a garden in a jar aseptically.
Certainly.
No, I disagree actually as far as the art, because it really
Right,
just
scientists disagreeing.
Science.
Disagree, science.
but this is why Eric and I'll enjoy working together. No, but I do think that it is the research has to be done, and so the reason why micropropagation is so successful in the orchid industry or in horticulture or even in pharmaceuticals is you just have to conduct the experiments, and that's where this industry hasn't had that possibility yet until just now. And so there are various experiments that need to be done, and I also think that there are multiple ways to do micropropagation and different types of vessels. And so one more natural way to think about this.
Well, to reach the scale, you know, of like, to get anywhere near like 10,000 to 50,000 plants a month, you're looking at temporary immersion systems like a Cetus reactor or something like that. And then now you're talking like, that not $100,000 lab or a $200,000 lab, but a $300,000 or $400,000, because every rack of a Cetus reactor costs $25,000.
Well, actually, I wasn't going there,
so
Eric. What I'm bringing
it's hard to find.
What I was actually bringing up is we were talking about, you know, the hardening off and the acclimation and to be able to do it. So there's a different forms of micropropagation, and I'm not even talking big farm or doing anything bioreactor, but photoautotrophic micropropagation. And for those organic growers out there is one approach to doing micropropagation is optional, but again, the R&D has to be done. And so that gets to your point. And so what's so good about and why I bring this up is you're now growing these cultures and they're still in a vessel, but instead of a sealed vessel, it's actually a ventilated vessel. You crank up the CO2, you have a little bit higher light.
Mm-hmm. No sugar. Yeah, so the plants are creating their own sugar as opposed to being exogenous.
And what we see with that, and I did this with the orchids that I was mentioning just a little bit earlier, you have higher success with rooting, you have better stomatal conductance, you have a waxy cuticle that develops in culture, and now your acclimation phase it's going to be, and you're going to have higher take and success and viability in those things. So I think that there's so many options. Again, it just requires, you know, the work and the effort. And so most of us out there growing, we're actually, you know, kids got to make a living.
Proof of concept for a lot of stuff.
And then it takes
the low-hanging
space.
fruit is there, but you have to actually.
And it takes space. Yeah. And so it's like, okay, so one of the things that we talk a lot when we're doing the consulting or people approach us, and I'm sure you've been asked this question a lot, it's like, okay, do I need moms? So another option, and again,
you definitely need moms. I like to think of it as a raid drive. That's what I was saying earlier. Is like people think that tissue culture is this magical thing where I can just take my plants, put them in a room, in a jar, and forget about it. Really, every 2 or 3 weeks, someone has to subculture those. There's a lot of maintenance involved with it. And I personally wouldn't. I mean, I like to think of it like a raid drive for networking. You know, if you're going to back up your plants this way, you need to have 3 to 5 stages of tissue culture for each strain just to have any reasonable semblance of security. And I also would keep living plants. You have to constantly refresh micropropagation stocks with new explants, or else, you know, after 10 subcultures, things can definitely start to get weird. I've only subcultured a few strains out to like that point 10 times, but you know, you definitely are going to want to refresh your stock at some point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, and it's, you know, nature does make things way easier than trying to like completely drop it from the picture when you're like, you know, we'll just stick it in a freezer, it'll be fine. Same with seeds. I mean, the amazing part about seeds is like the ones that are not frozen, even not in a fridge temper necessarily, but just kept at a really steady temperature, whether it be 40 or 50 or whatever, as long as it's not too hot. Those things last 20, 30 years, no problem, you know what I mean? And you just look at the beauty of that, and it's like, well, you know, there's certain things that are like, okay, this is why we have this. And when it comes to propagating clones, you know, the plant does, if it, like you said before, some plants are good, some plants are bad. If I have a plant that's really, really bad, it has to be really, really, really good to even want to keep it around, because for me, that's like the most frustrating part of the whole thing. If I have to waste tray after tray and to get like more than 10% or 20%, there's no point in keeping that right, no matter how good it is. But there's a few that sometimes you're like, just God,
that's your craft right there, your craft brew, so to speak, maybe.
Yeah, the lack of success is your success?
Cryopreservation is another hot topic that everyone loves to talk about, And I think I've had some success with cold storage of cultures, and sodium alginate encapsulation or like synthetic seeds can definitely be stored at colder temperatures for like up to 15 weeks and still be regenerated. And the word on the street is that Dr. Latta, who did the original 2009 TDZ micropropagation paper and the Metatopolen 2016 paper, she has informed me at the meeting that hopefully hope you're going to be speaking at the Society for In Vitro Biology.
Oh, I look forward to that.
I spoke with her this year, and she's going to be hopefully they're going to be publishing a cryo paper, I think, possibly this year. That's the word on the street.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
What date is that?
Yeah, I know.
The In Vitro conference, Eric, is that in June?
I think in Missouri this year.
Yeah, I think it's in June.
It was 2 years ago. It was in San Diego. This year we're in Missouri. I guess they grow a lot of corn out there, I guess. So.
Definitely
fascinating.
Corn. Mm.
They're just into cannabis for the money. They just want our money.
Right. That's what they all want.
They're like, everywhere. This is they'll be like the guys in Miami who were telling me about how much cocaine they brought in. Yeah. These guys will be like, you see all that corn? That used to be just marijuana.
Yeah,
everybody will come out of the woodwork.
The crazy thing is, there's so many science. When I went to these meetings, there's all these scientists that like they're not into corn. They probably got into the plant sciences because they smoked weed back in the 60s, and they're all really excited about it. I mean, I've got like half a dozen people from like Pioneer Agriscience online that as soon as we get as soon as we build it, they will come. So that's why I'm really excited to sit down with you at some point in the future, hope, and figure out how we can work together to build some sort of cannabis biotech.
Yeah, we see a lot of unsolicited resumes of people trying to get into the science of it. So that's definitely true.
And I'm looking forward to it, and for everyone to be a fly on the wall during that conversation with Eric and I'm sure is going to be worthy. But I do think...
No, we'll have to make everybody sign NDAs.
NDAs, there you go.
That seems to be what we do in our industry. But I do think, and the reason why I'm excited to work with Eric and other people in this industry, and I think we were talking about earlier, it's not a super secret, right? I mean, there are nutrient formulations, there are plant growth regulations. I mean, there are things that can be trademarked as far as are patented based off of developing protocols, but it's what you do with it. And again, it's what's the goal? And is there something that you need to rescue? Can we teach you then doing embryonic rescue? And that's a procedure, right? So if there's something you really want to rescue, or if it's something that's really tough to do across, can we help you do crosses, protoplast fusions, and do hybrid crosses in that way that makes it a little bit more unique, and it's faster and it's more turnaround.
Right. Breeding for recessive traits is going to be a really
fun.
Big thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because that's where almost all of the pathogen resistance genes that we found, like in Arabidopsis, are recessive traits. And no one is breeding cannabis for recessive traits. It's almost always just trying to collect as many valuable dominant traits that we want into one plant. And usually when that works, it's because we combined a bunch of dominant traits that are compatible with each other.
Hybrid.
But no one's really dabbled into breeding for recessive.
Yeah, I think that's definitely
will be
a misused word. You hear breeders like, "Oh, it's recessive," and it's
recessive just means
recessive for what?
It pops up, and you have no idea where the fuck it came from. That's pretty much what recessive usually means.
It means it's segregated. Yeah.
I have no fucking idea. I always tell people...
It means that the gene only expresses itself if there's two copies. So if there's another copy that codes for something else that's dominant, you'll never see those recessive traits. What tissue culture can enable is you to grow a haploid plant, which only has one allele for every loci. And by doing that, you see recessive traits. So you can literally grow a pollen grain into a plant. You can grow an embryo into a plant. And that plant will not hide any of its recessive traits. And then, I don't want to get too into it. But
it's good, juicy.
And so I said you guys I know you're all like wanting to be a fly on the wall when we talk more. But there are a lot of possibilities. But I wanted to hear more about from you guys some of the,
The question
why
marks,
you
yeah.
think and have giggled about this technology for so long, and then now why are you curious from your perspectives if it's possible?
I've always been fascinated with tissue culturing. I think it's a fascinating technology. And after I started growing, I started doing a lot more research about botany and all that stuff. And I was like, wow, in vitro, blah blah blah, and how can it be applied? And I looked into it, and then what Breeder Steve, wasn't it him who was trying to take like the top 100 clones, and then he was trying to sell them worldwide in capsules, right? And that was his goal, was to be, here you go, you want Jack's Cleaner, you want Apollo 13, whatever, this is it. He pissed off a lot of breeders, but then he realized that he was breaking international law with his, he was shipping plants across international borders, and that plan went in the ground. And I think there was a lot of problems with what he was planning too. Are you actually going to be able to grow a plant out of a capsule? Instead of an X plant sitting in gel, is it going to work? And the average home grower who buys one of those, are they really going to be able to make that happen? No, right? So.
And I think that's where people like myself and Eric would be very anxious to participate is, okay, so as this market grows, as more individuals become knowledgeable, they may not want to do the tissue culture themselves, but if you do get a vessel, what do you do with it? And that is something that we absolutely can help growers be able to know, because it's the same as when you're ordering cuttings.
I think you hit the nail on the head there.
And I think,
people, I could see most production facilities having a lab-ish acclimation area to receive tissue culture plants and
So
hard
they
them
ship
off.
well.
Certainly.
That, to me, makes
It's needed.
Because they do ship well, and eventually, once we can ship across state lines. But you mentioned also the hemp growers. So more and more states that pass the hemp bills because of the Farming Act, those state agriculture agencies and those universities, you can ship, which is why you have the certified seed.
Certified seed stock.
So then you can actually ship across state lines.
Yep.
So again, from that perspective, for
And
those
those
growers,
guys do need 50,000 and 100,000.
exactly. And
30,000,
you
so.
think about the
but
encapsulation.
the problem I see with hemp and tissue culture is that most hemp is going to want to be field sown.
Yes, so that's what I'm bringing up. So the idea that you want to have a cultivar that is going to constantly produce 0.3% or less.
But that's the key of the whole thing, yeah.
And the certified seed, there's been shortages is another complexity that they're dealing with. And if you wanted to do the encapsulation, you can actually then still use the same farming equipment to be able to sow those encapsulated seeds, and then they know, instead of like seeds, you can know that you have a clone that is going to produce something of that profile that you know is always going to test below 0.3%.
Sure.
So I think
Right. There's a lot of potential too with depending on how the regulation goes, that states like I think Pennsylvania and maybe Maine, where you're forced to start from seed. If you could get elite genetics, because that's the thing. I mean,
Right.
there's like dozens of proven commercially viable strains, and if anyone who started up, seeds will tell you, like, it's pretty much like winning the lottery. I mean, you could start up 10,000 seeds and not find anything as good as the growth was. So if you can provide someone with a legal workaround for having to start from seed by saying, oh, this synthetic seed is a seed. So we need some lawyers. We need some good old-fashioned
know a few of those.
lobbying.
Right. I think in general, what Hope was asking is, Adam and I have been, we always kind of snicker about tissue culture. Yeah, it's fascinating. You just don't see people really applying it all.
And then the people who do talk about it the most are the people who definitely don't do it, and they're like telling you how they do it.
Or they want to sell kits and meet.
Yeah, they bought something online and they're like showing you, and you're like telling you how successful it is, and I'm like, really? I had a few. I had a bunch over the years, and that was always for me like, oh, kind of, because as a breeder, it was like, especially in Holland, because I had this assumption that in Holland everybody was somehow doing something different than just crossing plants. Like they thought everything was scientific. I was like, dude, we're talking about like dudes just doing normal crossing. Like there was nothing weird going down. A couple guys taking it kind of seriously, like Watson and those guys, but even they, no success. Like I asked them about it, they were like, "Yeah, we get to this certain point, it doesn't go any further." So
I can say from experience, one of the reasons why take it to a certain point is not knowing what you're getting into to get started. And I can say this from experience. So doing tissue culture in the cannabis industry, the very first place, one of the first places that I was a part of, they're like, turn the kitchen into a lab, and so, it's only going to be a couple $1,000s. Well, it's again knowing what the goal is and what you're doing, and so if you do it half-ass and not be able to truly do the researchers' unrealistic expectations. Let's focus this money on processing instead because we know how to do that. And so I think there's just a building of the knowledge base. And then once that you have clear demonstration of successful propagation on a large scale, then I think you're going to start seeing a little bit of a shift and that possibility for being able to do everything we've talked about right now. Because, again, for the cannabis industry, it is very new. Right. It is not new in all of other horticulture. I mean, huge production facilities. One of my colleagues...
It's not really new. Like, getting back to what Adam was saying, it's not really new in successful tissue culture is new in the cannabis space. Tissue culture itself, like Bill Graham, Microclone, he's been selling kits for 20 years. Yeah. The problem is like you said, Hope, that these recipes are fairly, you can just Google Scholar right now and come up with a half dozen recipes that will work for cannabis tissue culture. The real challenge is the technique, the art, the art of aseptic. Most people fail at the aseptic technique, and Bill Graham, that isn't his strong point, is teaching people aseptic technique. And honestly, that's where most people fail.
And that's the most important part.
It's like growing mushrooms too. Same with mushrooms. Everybody's like, so easy. You're like, well, do it, you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden they try it. It's like fail.
And wasted a lot of money, and then that's going to be, what's.
And then all of a sudden you find a guy who can do it, and then he gives you something that's ready to go.
One of the few things that OCD is
now
a
I'm
benefit.
a genius. It's like a clone.
Is aseptic technique.
Yeah, that is, it's key. It's key. And so to do it on a small scale, like Eric was saying, I mean, absolutely why? Why would you want to? We can teach you how to do it. We can teach you and train you to have that. And it doesn't require degrees to do tissue culture by any means. And you can actually take people who are interested in learning the technique, and you can be trained just like the good chefs in processing are not necessarily chemists, but boy, they sure as shit became chemists because of their passion and the goal, reaching the goal, making the best extract, etc. So the same is going to be true here.
A lot of that goes back to training of just moving in the right direction, not wasting time, and just being like the flow is right, and also in the right order. You know what I mean? Because if you don't do things in the right order, just like a little sloppy here, a little sloppy there, it doesn't help in any kind of. If you're
there's not much wiggle room.
Yeah, there's not, and you can't really play around with that kind of stuff. So and that's never been our sort of focal point as a starter.
But anyone with like a science-focused bachelor degree where they've done microbiology has the skill set. That's the foundation of that. And I think that's aseptic technique is really, I think, the biggest.
Yeah, that's the hurdle right there. Well, the good part is that now that people are open about it, you can find a failed pharmaceutical company or something like that has all built-in clean rooms that are really ready to go, and you can just kind of bring it in. Like, don't even try to waste your time trying to build it yourself, because you can probably buy into a place that already has.
They have auctions, and so a lot of my
I see a lot of auctions too. They're great.
A lot of my consulting has been helping with people. I've been helping them design a facility, and what are the considerations, what are the rooms, what should the workflow be, and this book that we talked about at the beginning of the show does a great job explaining why that's important. But you really do need a translation from, I'm obviously not an architect, but I can figure out the software programs. I know exactly what the workflow should be, why it should be that way, prepare for build out if you want to expand and scale up. And then they can take that drawing to their architects and their contractors, right? And so if it's something you want to do, we can help you get there. We can help train, we can help do that, transition and help you acclimate to that ability, but there's no need to rush necessarily. I know Eric and I would like to do it all the time, and that's because the research just needs to be done, and then turn it out there and see what we can do with it.
Well, it's pretty exciting. I mean, people finally get a chance to do the kind of things that we snickered about, so that's good, because that's like half of it was because of the fact that we knew who's going to waste their time and who's going to waste that money. Because at the end of the day, you will waste to get to the sort of comfortable zone where.
Oh, it's the bleeding edge of cannabis for sure.
And every time you sort
That's
of
true, yeah.
get to a certain goal, it's only by sacrifice, because at the same time you're not like, it's not the money machine, in my opinion, just because also the fact that we know how difficult it is when it leaves your hands and goes into their hands, and then what the fuck will they do with it? You know what I mean? And if people are, once they get adept to that, and you get that really like the receiving end gets figured out, people have like a real easy way for you to. You give it to them, they go in their little incubator, then their incubator actually throws down roots and makes it into something that they see as a plant. And then
Well,
they go,
the thing
shit.
is, though, is that it's like there's a really good review by Smolder in 2010 that kind of is an overview of the molecular genetics behind epigenetic rejuvenation. I mean, that's the other thing is you have to subculture at least twice to see that rejuvenation, in my experience. But
And a lot of time you want to subculture anyway because you're trying to increase numbers. So
Right.
it's a win-win. And you want that
well,
multiplication.
what on that note, what sort of multiplication rates have you seen? Because as far as I know, no one's really gotten past like 3 to 5x multiplication with micropropagation in cannabis.
Well, and I will say that there wasn't a need to do that necessarily because the multiplication that I see, even just from the first pass, I mean, the scaling is awesome. And so, and then everyone's been so anxious. So I haven't had the opportunity to do that experiment.
Yeah, I think the workaround for it is that, since there is such a low multiplication rate, that's why I've gone to the production of tissue culture clone mothers following the dark heart model. They're lablets. Because the epigenetic rejuvenation persists for
Up to about 8 to 10.
You can clone that plant. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there really isn't a need to give producers tissue culture plants. It's not necessary. If anything.
What about like?
But anyway, that's just my take on it.
What about instead of using like leaf that we're normally used to, and and going more like hybrid sort of style where you would get your plant almost about to root and have it really bubbling a little bit, and then slice off a couple of those, and then can you grow from that and then make it like cheat a little bit?
Well, micropropagation is shoot culture, so you're starting with, you're basically like microcloning.
Yeah, exactly.
And you want to start with as little material as possible. Callus cultures are formed from like petioles or leaf tissue, and the problem with callus culture is that you have an increased risk of what Hope mentioned earlier of genetic drift, some clonal variation, right? Because in nature, meristems have numerous cells within the meristem, and if anything deleterious happens to one of those cells, the other cells will replace it. When you regenerate an entire plant from callus, you're regenerating an entire plant from one cell. If there's any mutations or changes in that cell, it's going to affect that plant forever. That can be a benefit.
I was about to say that sounds awesome. Let's start doing a whole bunch off of those.
It can,
like freak
right? If that's
like,
what you're going for, or if
yeah.
you're trying to genetically transform plants and you need to derive the entire plant from one cell.
Right.
But micropropagation is the goal is shoot proliferation without intervening callus. Once you have callus tissue, your plant you're already kind of falling off the bike, so to speak.
That's kind of, and that's what I always seen back in the day. My friends always showed me stuff, and I'd be like, "What the hell's that?" It's like that looks terrible. It was like
I do
all
want
callous.
to add that
Callus culture looks cool.
Yeah, it looked weird, but
there is a way to do callus culture, and again, just going back to the industry and orchids and other crops, especially when it comes to like bananas and other crops. So there is a way to do callus culturing so it remains differentiated, so to speak. Basically, you're just breaking down into individual cells, but it's not becoming undifferentiated. So it's not reverting to meristematic necessarily.
Right, but you still have the same problem where if something happens to that cell, you've now affected the entire line.
Right,
and
but
most people in cannabis want to maintain the integrity. Their goal in archiving is to maintain the integrity 100%, if not improve the integrity. So I just don't see callus culture as being super. It's cool and it has its applications in other areas, but as far as the propagation of the plant, I don't really see it as being a viable route.
I just wanted to explain so that way there is possibility to be able to do it. And then again, it depends on the goal and the question, right? And so I think that there would
And also, I don't think anyone had direct organogenesis from callus tissue and cannabis. I don't think they have. I think that's still kind of the sword in the stone.
Working on it.
I've seen lots of people do like hairy root cultures and right. But I mean, the paper that just came out in Lotta's book, they were unsuccessful. They had to publish their hairy root culture. They weren't able to recover any actual plants from the callus cultures. They saw green nodules that looked like they would be viable, but were unsuccessful in actually establishing direct organogenesis from undifferentiated cells.
Just a matter of time.
I'm pretty confident I'm going to be the one to do it. Just watch my feed.
22. Yeah.
It's coming. I'll show you. We definitely should corroborate on the more science side of it at some point.
It'll be fun. It'll be.
And so all his techniques you think will be applicable in space or what?
Absolutely, absolutely. One of the coolest things that I learned when we were doing the research with plants in space is the initial idea and the reason why it was questionable. Can you grow plants in space? Is the orientation and gravity. So lack of gravity, right? And so one of the best things that was gained from all of those experiments, actually, when they would go up in shuttles, and there was one project that just finished up when I was started there. It's called the Pesto Project, and basically it wasn't, they were not doing, pine or anything, but they were doing, I believe it was wheat. But they've known for a while that you could, but they couldn't figure out the mechanism because they thought there's these little granules in the cell, and they're called amyoplasts, and they settle to the bottom of the cell. And in the experiments that were done before, seemed to, if you changed the orientation of the plant, the granules would also realign to be on the bottom of that cell. So they thought the lack of gravity, how would the roots know to grow down and how will the shoot know to grow up? I mean, it's an interesting question, right? So it seems to be obviously more driven by light. Is some of the very cool experiments that they were able to demonstrate. And then even if light was exposed to the rooting area, well, we know because of tissue culture that, sometimes it's dark media and that kind of simulates, a more soil-like environment, but you don't necessarily need that. And the roots still know to grow down, but that's the genetic programming that, to a certain extent, Eric was bringing up, the ability to be able to become a specific cell type. So even though if you might just start from and then be able the totopotency. So any cell of a plant typically has the ability to become any type of tissue. So that's why tissue culture works. That's why roots know to grow down, because that was that's the programming that we got, and now they're going to grow down, but it seems to be more light dependent than gravity dependent. So yeah, I think that we should be growing cannabis in space, absolutely.
I do too.
Absolutely. And you know what, actually the other cool thing, these acronyms that NASA puts out, they would actually have meetings to come up with, a sexy acronym. I shouldn't be telling this, but because they want the media to grab onto it, pesto, or they want it to be something that's memorable. And so the individuals that I worked with, I was mentioning Bios Neil Urio, shout out. A lot of those acronyms actually sound very scientific, and they come up with and fill in the acronym so it makes sense, some sort of, name of the experiment. But really, it's all based off of Grateful Dead songs. And so that's the original acronym meaning, but they know that, but the general public doesn't know that, where that comes. So I know they would love to grow cannabis in space because that's what drives them too, and that's why the lighting experiments were important.
Sure. To
be able to understand the different colors of light. And I'm sure, Eric, you're seeing different growth patterns. I know I have based off of certain types of light. Temperature and gas exchange seem to be really important when it comes to culturing cannabis in my hands here. Certain lights, certain wavelengths, gas exchange, if it's too warm, too hot.
Red light definitely helps with rooting, definitely.
So all those tricks that you guys already use is something that we have to consider in culture as well.
Yeah, it's noticeable too when you're growing, like if you're making a lot of clones and you just hang one, you use a light flower food, and you would use a phosphorus bulb instead of a metal halide, just because the rooting metal halide is kind of, it makes a good leaf, but it doesn't really make a good root. So it's always like kind of just by learning on our own,
That's right.
in our own little way. That was it was like, if you want to slow it down, you go to do it the way it's supposed to do it, and then you do
The
it
way you know it works.
and then do it the way that you kind of hack job. And the hack job, it went quicker, but it was like everything was a little stressed, a little different too, because it went rooted real fast, and
Yeah.
a lot of times they didn't have much top things happening, and so people, and in Holland, people just cloned. They got one plant, clone the hell out of it, and many disaster stories with people selling males or Hermes and males and all sorts of things because they didn't pay attention. So it's like, got to slow people down sometimes.
Well, the genetics,
lane.
that's going to be one of the important factors of why tissue culture, I think, for cannabis industry is going to become important, and that's because of the mess with the genetics right now. I mean, the idea, okay, strain names, we know that that's an issue, but as we talked about at the beginning of the show here, the idea that there's a lot of viruses and pathogens out there, whether or not it's always symptomatic, but do you want to be buying and going and getting new genetics, and then all of a sudden you're going to have a problem? You want to make sure that if you are getting new genetics, you don't have to necessarily just go to the black market, because every other reputable source is selling shit. So it's important to have good, clean stock to be able to start with and be able to have a successful grow.
It's a great starting point, of course, and especially if you can be certified and you'll have a date that it was made and a date that it actually went out the door, and it makes, that you know exactly where you're coming from, and that's what a lot of people kind of need, because they have to be completely transparent, and they, in a way, it's also getting to the point too where everybody with the names and stuff, it will be a lot more labeling, just because you can't get too far down the rabbit hole and then find out you're not allowed to do it because they changed the rules again and said, now it can't be anything that sounds fun at all. Like, this has got a fun sound. We don't like no fun, so it must be like E3113286.
Already
You're
made
going to
that.
need a permit to do that.
But it is, and also for a lot of times,
Hazmat.
for safety reasons too, people are going to start to not name things just because they don't want to pay for fucking licensing. And when it comes
I
down,
think the disruptive nature of cannabis micropropagation is going to be in the development of, like Hope was saying, you can index plants and hand people a tabula rasa, a clean slate of genetic material, and they have the SOPs in their facility to maintain the integrity of those plants. It's going to be a game changer.
Yep, absolutely.
You're going to see, the quality, the lack of, less dependence on pesticides, and you're gonna see it offset the cost. You might have to pay a higher premium for the tissue culture plants, but you're going to see a reduction, an increase in yield, the ability to maintain your quality and have less inputs and labor. And I mean, we all know what's available. If you have a pest problem in cannabis right now, the labor input is huge, because we don't really have anything that's super effective as a one-shot treatment, like a translaminar miticide doesn't exist. So you're pretty much, looking at dumping thousands and thousands of dollars into limping along with these problems. So if you can start out clean and then maintain that integrity through the process, and that's the other beautiful part. If you outsource your clones, you only need to keep them healthy for 2 or 3 months versus years.
Right.
yeah. And what about say somebody has a library and they're trying to maintain it, and in the long run, is there going to be you think there'll be any kind of value in like maintaining and holding somebody's library for X amount per year? Because that is like you said, every 2 weeks they got to go and
Gene bank.
kind of keep rolling it and keep it going, but that'd be like some big money right there.
Well, look at what happened in California with the fires. So what happens if, for whatever reason, a natural disaster happens
Right.
and you've lost everything?
Sure.
It would be, for me, I would feel very, very good if I knew I had a genetic bank somewhere. And I do think...
Yeah, it's like a hybrid system.
Yeah. What do you mean by a hybrid system?
Right, Hope. not just relying exclusively on tissue
yeah.
archive.
Oh, yeah,
Absolutely,
both.
absolutely.
Having
for
I
sure.
agree 100.
Oh yeah, you
Yeah,
would need access to all the material, so you would be able to keep it going. But that's the idea, like
Yeah.
kind of have every stage ready to go, and that way they can go. Oh, I need this. Oh, I need that. I need.
Shit happens.
It does.
Would be
As,
a-
It has
as
to
we
be
know.
a pretty well crafted contract for liability, though.
Oh my
I'm
god,
not
yeah,
sure
it'd be a
I'd wanna
rough
take
one.
on the
It'd be
responsibility.
it wouldn't be cheap, that's for sure. It'd be like one of those ones where you could finally name your
Yeah.
price. You know what I mean? You'd be like, now I have all your genetics. And they'd just be like,
We'll securely back up your stuff, but we're not responsible if something goes wrong.
our prices are going up.
Can we get that?
Our prices are going up. Talk to our lawyer.
The lawyers are thinking about it right now.
And that's the biggest thing I see with tissue culturing and offering a service like that is just, are you willing to give up your IP to somebody else to hold on to? And how do you know that they're not going to turn around and be like, and
Which is
Or
why I
do
think
whatever.
we do
Cameras-
the consulting.
cameras
We
built
can help
into your-
you do that,
I'd
and you
still
can
be scared to
store your
store it.
own.
Did you hear about Amazon with their
Oh, yeah.
Amazon Key idea?
What?
no,
Oh yeah, going into your house.
I was like, that's the same thing. And I was like,
Yeah.
it's like if you're gonna let people go into your house from Amazon just because you think it's easier and cheaper, and
Uh-huh.
you're like, hey, yeah, people steal my shit sometimes. Well, just let Amazon in. But they have a camera. The idea is that they'll have a special camera to set up so that everybody can see what the fuck's going on.
Well,
So,
I
and they
think
can
one of
see
the
your-
ways that people will have the security of that will be, you can use PCR to generate, strain-specific markers like fingerprints, so to speak, and you can sort of, you can even take dried plant material from a store and see if it's your strain or not.
Right.
So, that's all doable, but we're not quite there yet. But Phylos Genetics, I'm sure, is, they're barreling down that path pretty quickly.
certainly. And let's bring it back to that topic. I've been there in Portland with Phylos for a while. And just the people in general, I've been telling people, all of the sex test kits, let's just go and rub, our leaves in these folders and give them back to these companies. And nothing against Phylos or those services, but you are giving living cells back. And that kind of comes back to what you were just talking about. Yeah, you need one living cell to resurrect that tissue culture. And even though, the good question, so how far-fetched out is that right now?
So when I say living cell, it needs to be harvested in the right conditions.
Right,
So
not exactly.
yeah. So even from a lab,
Right,
when
from
you're
a
having,
culture vessel.
Yeah. So there is some protection there, but when we talk about the gene bank, which is why you're bringing this up, right? So if it's frozen away, sure, it's possible. So I do think that there are legitimate concerns for protecting intellectual property, but I do also think that there are ways around that. And this, again, is done. And it's just a matter of working out those procedures and those understandings. And there's no reason in the world why you couldn't actually establish your own genetic bank. And that's doesn't need to be kept on your grow premise. Right? And so you could hire people to actually do it for you, but you store it. So I think that would be maybe a transition because until everyone gets comfortable with how to be able to do that testing, right? So there's a lot of labs right now, even if it's legal in the state, may not handle cannabis. So that now we're talking about more laboratory equipment, more expertise, and more of those issues. So I think right now, for us to help you be able to generate your own genetic bank, let you know that you need a -80, here's the procedures, the protocols, you own that, and then
Extracting DNA from plant tissue is just like making really complicated macaroni and cheese. There's kits that you can get that literally they give you all the solutions, all the equipment. All you need is a microcentrifuge and some micropipetters and a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of science knowledge, like being able to convert molarity and things like that. And any college graduate science, bachelor of science could probably do that for you. It's what you do with the extracted DNA that's the question. What do you
do with the cells? So I think for you as a breeder, what would be your goal if you could do this?
Tissue culture as a breeder, it's archiving, right, and preservation, and having clean mother plants. Those are the three essential things that I want. And then it's fascinating when you look at the potential of breeding in vitro.
Yeah.
That is absolutely, that's that next level thing of let's do marker-assisted breeding. Let's speed up the process and.
Yeah, and also just like the things we reinforce what we already think we already know, and or blow us like, oh, I never even knew that. But for the most part, hoping that is like you think you got this thing that you. Yeah, when you talk about like recessive, like we were saying earlier, like if you grew it enough times, you're gonna know there's like one out of whatever that pops up, and it's like that's the one. Actually,
you harvest that one and you grab it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's I think it's pretty awesome.
And even true breeding, talking with Mowgli from Philos, we've had this discussion. He's like, true breeding does not exist. Who is breeding anything true? And you see that in the galaxy. Everything is way over here, and maybe only a couple of varieties are over far on the left. Where
there's no homozygous.
Yeah, there's not.
No,
there's not.
And that's exciting though.
It is.
Because
That's
no one's
fascinating.
seen true hybrid vigor in cannabis yet, right? So tissue culture actually is the quickest way to get to.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking like 100% homozygous, like a mirror image. So that's no one's to that point yet. I mean, that's going to be sort of down the road with direct organogenesis from callus culture.
It's good to have
it's something
goals.
I would like to work on.
The R&D.
If you can produce
Bring
the first true breeding cannabis
Networking,
plant,
teamwork.
that's going to
what it
be pretty
takes.
exciting.
Yep.
Yeah, bringing science together with the cannabis community. It's just so exciting, and it's.
A whole new version of geeking out, my friend.
Yeah.
Well, the cool thing too is like back in the day when you read like Drake and those books, those cannabis books that were all like this most high tech of the time. They still were like, double boiler, grandma's thing was definitely not like as high tech as anything that people have done now. And now it's like people have access to stuff that's like plug and play. Like it's great when you actually like look at a catalog and be like, this shit already exists, man. It's all here. It's like, there it is. It's like, because there's so many different industries that we're totally unaware of because of cannabis people. We kind of stay in our lane for the longest time.
You had to.
It wasn't like we were like out there just spending hundreds of thousands of dollars at the lab just for fun. Like, yeah, let's do that. That won't get you in any trouble. You know what I mean? Compared to like,
not at all.
Except for a few people, there'd always be the few. The one guy who's the kind of.
Yeah, I mean, you might not really see it come online all the way until cannabis companies can be publicly traded.
Yeah,
right?
always
We're seeing more of this happening in Canada, where a company can be profitable even if the margins are negative.
Mm-hmm.
If you're publicly traded, you can be profitable just because you have the right business model and a sexy pitch deck.
Right.
So
I'm
that's
still trying
when
to
we'll
make
see a
sense
lot
of
of
that.
this kind of ancillary research happening when people have a couple of $1 million to spare, and the sexiness of the project increases the interest and the validity of the stock option.
And if they're out there, contact us.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, the reality is there's so many people with this penny stocks and this bullshit stuff that you don't, like, there's no meat on the bone. You kind of come in, you meet everybody, and you're like, so why is there this word cannabis all over whatever you're talking about, but you're not really about it? You're not, oh, well, and then you start talking CBD, and then you ask them where they get it from, and it's from China, and you're just kind of like, all right, this guy sucks. These guys suck, And then you walk away from the booth, and you look back, and you're like, that is the biggest...
Carpetbaggers. I call them carpetbaggers.
Oh, they're totally.
And on that subject, Ryan and I were talking. They just got done doing a bunch of testing on CBD products from the market. And tell us what you saw.
Yeah, there was, and that was kind of to my point earlier today when we talked about some of the benefits of testing being that there is some protection to, comparing to label claims, consumer protection. But we had, it was almost like it was a mission this guy went on, and he brought in like 15 or 16 different CBD products, and we tested the whole gamut. And these are sent all over the country. Some of them are produced there locally in Arizona, but others are sent all over the country in major manufacturers. Come to find out, some of these are 10, 15% of label claims. They're claiming 1,000 milligrams, testing at 100.
Right.
There was a manufacturer that was claiming 1,500 milligrams in a tincture. 0 detectable CBD.
Oh, I bet.
It's full of
this
fraud.
is the type of stuff that we're seeing that, you have sick people and you have people that are spending money to seek out an alternate treatment here, and now someone is just flat out robbing them.
Snake oil.
Snake oil is exactly what it is.
I have a question, getting back to what you guys were talking about at the beginning of the show. To me, all of this testing is great, but unless you're using a statistically significant sampling process that isn't done by the processor themselves, I question the validity of anything.
No, and you're right, and a lot of
I don't know if in Arizona you happen to.
No, Arizona, we
addressed
certainly
that
don't have
before.
that. But Oregon does have where the labs come out and they do the sampling, and many other states are taking on that model, understanding that in order for it to be, scientifically valid, you need to have you have to have a representative sample from the entire crop from different batches.
Right, a 5-pound batch, half a gram sample from a 5-pound batch.
Yeah, that's not doing
You're not
it.
using
Yeah,
a statistically significant sampling method. I mean, that could have just fallen in there from anywhere.
Yep, and a lot of states are recognizing that, and they do have some training that's required from the lab standpoint for certified samplers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's always good to be on site, have something going on, just so you can keep an eye on what you're doing. But you definitely shouldn't use that as like your thing to tell the public or to kind of like because it doesn't matter how you do it. Like you were talking about earlier, you're gonna probably cherry pick your shit, and you're going to want to hype it.
And it's the perception of a conflict of interest, whether there's one or not. I mean, if the perception's there, it's equally as damaging quite often.
Yeah, you could have a total, they hire an asshole and say, do it for real, you know what I mean? And then you come back and be like, yeah, 14%.
As a business owner, I think it's
impossible.
If I was in a regulated state as a grower, as a business owner, I do think doing self-testing, I wouldn't want to submit anything to testing that I feared would fail, right? And so I do think from that in-house for that purpose, but it's still from a legal fraud protection, statistically significant reason it needs to be done by an independent source. And that's exactly a model from the food industry, right? So it's, again...
From your microbial testing, do you do PCR-based or culture-based testing?
Culture.
Or both?
Culture
Culture.
See, now that's interesting to me because powdery mildew
can't be cultured.
Is an obligate parasite.
Right, can't be cultured.
It's almost impossible to culture in vitro.
That's right.
I think that was a mistake in states like Washington to go
you're
handling route.
Yeah, you're 100% right there, Eric. And you see a lot of states now going away from that because it's a general indication of microbial activity, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there's pathogenic microbials there.
Right, E. coli, Aspergillus, sure, but not some of them harder to culture.
And then again, I think it's unrealistic some of the standards that some states have set where it's under 50,000 CFU or under 100,000 CFU. Well, that's not realistic on an outdoor crop. It's not realistic to expect that.
Right.
It's just not. And then
it's ubiquitous. Yeah, it's going to be there. And is it of health concern? And if it's even in something that's of health concern, maybe for some individuals, it just
put a warning label on it.
Exactly.
And then everyone has a choice. Exactly right.
Yeah.
And that's what I was saying before. I was like, how much fucking mold and things we smoked over the years, and like none of us died, and none of us got really sick. I've never had any friend go like,
unless you're immunocompromised, it's not harmful. When I was with a company in Napa, Sonoma, making wine as an enologist, and the winemakers would actually sometimes, instead of sorting out all of the grapes that had botrytis, be like, no, don't take all of it out, just the really bad looking stuff. They like the flavor.
Well, actually, botrytis is part of the. From what I understand, Riesling is sweet because the botrytis cinerea breaks down the starches into sugar. Mm-hmm. So actually, in viticulture, they use botrytis.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that again, it's how
communicating.
Kind of like you were saying, food industry too. Like they'll waste tons of food because of how one little imperfection will end up is, non-edible for humans or some bullshit, and they'll give it to either animals or throw it away or do something stupid. But a lot of times it's just because people are so used to everything being like perfect. It's got to be perfect, and in the long run, all those are heirloom things and those original funky kind of things. Those are the things that actually have the flavor still.
Well, and again, modeling from the food industry, I think once the industry kind of gets more standardized as far as knowing how to grow on a large commercial scale without a ton of pesticides and without, understanding IPM, that's pretty novel for the industry because you didn't have to do it. I mean, I do think that when you grow very small scale, it's a different approach to growing. So a lot of these mandates are pretty harsh right now, but I do think modeling off of the food industry, if you keep testing negative for pesticides and you keep testing negative for microbials, it doesn't mean that you need to always test every batch. hash. The food industry will do it on a periodic basis throughout the year, but not every single time, because you've demonstrated your protocols, your methods, and this is, again, common. So I think that will help the cost of everything, but still ensure public safety, because now everyone's understanding how to grow on these larger scales, and they've demonstrated they're doing it in
a history of compliance, and we've even approached it that way too, because if you do that each and every batch, you're passing along a significant cost to the growers, one that is ultimately going to be passed along to the patients and to the consumer.
Or even lead to shortages, because a lot of these, the pesticides and the microbials do take more time to test. So to do a profile, sure, we can do that in 24-hour turnaround time, not a problem. Solvents, not a problem. But some of these other more complicated tests take a lot more time, which is why they're more expensive. They require more expensive instrumentation. And so that's why you a lot of times have shortages. And that needs to not happen, because A, business, and then B, it's a medicine. At least in the state of Arizona, it's passed as medicine. So if somebody's taking their medication and all of a sudden can't get their prescription refilled, how would we feel about, that's not okay. So the industry is going to find that balance.
Standardization.
There was like 450,000 pounds held in metric last year here, which is like, it's a lot of work when you start thinking about it, because it's all finished material too. It's
just sitting on it, and
and they're just keep testing it, and it's good now. It's all kind of leached down. It's like, oh my god! So,
it's all converted.
And that's one of the difficulties I think we have. It's a blessing and a curse to be on the front edge of it being. It being recreationalized and it being in all these other states, is that's kind of part of the growing pains, is we have to start providing context to some of this, instead of just running with the assumptions and making real significant financial detriment to the growers and producers. We have to discuss how it could be, how these contaminants can be there and what could be causing them, and what mitigation processes we should be taking, as opposed to just,
The levels have to get realistic too, because sometimes they're part per billionth, you know what I mean? And you're like, really, part per billionth we're talking, and like never really.
Yeah, the limit of detection, you could perceive a gnat farting 2 blocks down the road, but does it matter?
It doesn't. And not to mention, it sticks around for a year plus, a lot of these compounds.
Well, yeah, and especially because if people come into old places and they don't know what the other guys did, and it's like they don't.
Or if it's in the water.
And there's a lot of like stuff that you're like, all right, well, I don't know. I feel like we went nanny state on cannabis real quick. Where we're like, okay, and the problem is it's our own arguments back in our face, where we used to say like, you never know. In the sense when it burns, what happens? You know what I mean? But then you take a backwood or something like that, and you go and test that. You guys ever do that? Like test any kind of like consumer things?
Yeah, we taste like e-liquids and the vape juices and stuff like that. And again, that very well right there is something that became really trendy.
Yeah,
but then nobody thinks about the cheap artificial flavorings and the diketones that are stuffed in there that people are then inhaling.
The metal elements.
Yeah, exactly. The cheap metal elements everyone's ordering for 75-cent cartridges, and
then we were just talking about earlier about the synthetic terpenes, and then how when they're combusted at high heat they turn into benzene. So. We're finding out that benzene's in all these fucking terpenes.
Well, right, and again, that's controlling your temperature a little bit, but it also is to the point of everyone's using and reintroducing terpenes and breaking things down in individual pieces and then concocting their own little formula, right? Nature did it pretty damn good. Why don't we just assume Mother Nature got it right and let the flower do what the flower does?
No one ever makes it taste good. It's always like, well, this tastes like real blueberries, but not really blueberries.
No.
It's like blueberries,
like when you
like
get the
blueberries.
fluoride rinse.
Exactly. Blueberries, not blueberries.
It's like when you get the fluoride rinse at the dentist office and it's banana, and you're like, that's no banana I ever had. Something really off about that.
Well, yeah, and again, like people are only working off of maybe 30 max, and if that, doubt it, probably like 20, like you guys 24, whatever. Even that like is not nothing compared to what's in there. Like there's hundreds, and we're just like, oh, okay, well, there's all these little in between bits that we're not missing, and they're. You can't take like eucalyptus and some myrcene and then think you got weed. You know what I mean? It's there is weed. It's weed. It's like, what about all the rest of it?
Yeah.
And we're all kind of big, fans of just real good tasting hash and weed. And you're like, wow, this is.
Keep it simple, man.
We don't want to lose that ability. And I'm glad it's that complicated. It's like at least it's not like we haven't unraveled everything. I mean. we have it a lot in the last few years. We're the point where we're like, okay, we used to not know why, or we used to not know how, and now we know kind of all that, but we still can't reproduce it yet.
And I think as an industry, we should also tread a little bit lightly, because we certainly don't want to get into the whole game of, everyone should take vitamin C because it's going to cure colds. And then all of a sudden a study comes out, 2 years later and says, actually, maybe vitamin C isn't so good. And then 2 years after that it comes back, it's like, no, it's the hot thing again. So that's what I love about cannabis, is it's persistently beautiful as a plant. What we do with it, the whole phytochemistry is already there. We don't necessarily, I think, as an industry, need to get into that hardcore pharmaceutical aspect and start doing a lot of the cocktail dancing, because then we're going to lose what the plant has already provided.
And we do that with everything else. I mean, we
Of course.
everything. Like
Yep.
nothing else we haven't stripped down and ruined and just turned it into.
Let's ruin it. Let's break it into pieces.
break it up and leave it naked.
I think there's going to be a difference. Like, there's going to be commodity THC, just like CBD.
Yeah,
And that's going to
agreed.
be, eventually
That's
like a
big
field-grown
business.
hemp plant that can be machine harvested and extracted. And THC, it's sort of like ethanol. Like ethanol, pure ethanol has a commodity value, like a supply and demand based value. But beer and wine are craft items, and that's always going to be where, like what Hope's talking about, that you're never going to, I don't think we're going to lose that either. I don't know, what percentage. Obviously, vape pens and distillate is a huge thing. So, people like you and I, Adam, might be more of an anomaly.
So many people out there too are like conditioned with their nicotine thing anyway.
Yeah.
So they don't see the difference between. They think they're getting more for their money, obviously, if they're going to use something with THC or CBD in it. But if it tastes like a pina colada, who cares? You know what I mean? They don't care. They have no desire to like even understand the little nuances that we're all like really like. Whoa, this
Ignorance is
like,
bliss.
we
I
can
guess,
get it.
for
We
them,
can get an
yeah.
orange tasting product, but it won't be like artificial orange. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
that's right.
And when we say artificial orange, it's still not artificial orange. You know what I mean? It is tasty, and wow, it tastes almost as good like artificial orange. But
Well, and not all the flavors are even terpenes, right? Like there's flavonoids involved.
Right.
There's also like the skunky smells or thiols or like
Thiols.
sulfur alcohol.
yeah, and a lot of those are things that disappear when, like, temperature-wise.
Very difficult to isolate.
Yeah.
Well, actually, because the thiols, the skunky garlic smells,
Uh-huh.
usually come off in distillation with the garbage. Like usually people just throw that away because it's
Interesting.
Is it heavier?
thiol
Is it
considered
heavier, or
contaminant.
is it sticks to the whatever's there or something? Or when it comes off easier, it comes off easier like on the first run or something, or
right. It comes off with the phenolics and things that are considered to be bad.
right.
Sulfur compounds. Yeah, thiols.
Yeah, and that's also part of the breaking.
I like the garlicky
Me,
sulfur.
me too. Good stuff. I love the good old
Yeah.
garlicky
Yeah, and those are things that are
indicas.
kind of weird too, because they when you store that kind of stuff, it's because it's so funky. When it actually loses all of its thing, it's still kind of a funky, but it's a different kind. You know what I mean? All of a sudden, you're like, wait a minute, what happened? And it has this thing about it, like it's. I remember keeping a bunch of buds like that at one point, and like because they were big and ridiculous, but then it like kept them way too long. You know what I mean? And I finally went back and I was like, man, this thing.
And then that funk was real funk.
It was,
Like,
it,
it was
had
like, yeah.
it had completely reversed into like some other, but it was almost the same.
You don't
level.
see a lot of distillate, a lot of extracted products that have those smells. You see a lot of the like citrus, myrcene, the larger, more stable terpenes. But it's hard. It's almost impossible to capture. I think those things in a distillate, not a distillate, but even in DHO, it's challenging. Yeah.
Nice one. Yeah, you guys can go through there. And just watch your feet on the, and he goes through, knocks it all down. Not you, not him, of course. I was waiting on him. So,
It's like family.
see, we're maxing it out.
Isn't it 420 there?
Oh, it's way past that.
Oh,
It's
yeah, it's
550.
It's always
Jones and all.
420.
Luckily, we're not so precise. Now that Odie's here, it's 420, right? Odie, you got some buds over here for us?
I can stand it. We
Yep.
just
Somebody else take a turn.
You're good. You're good.
I know you can stay if you like. We gotta keep at least one woman at the table here. Otherwise, we look.
I'm representing.
Yeah. Otherwise,
Soften the rough edges.
just a bunch of white guys again. One of those shows.
Indeed. How you doing?
Good, man. Welcome.
Thank you, bro.
Welcome.
I think the last time I saw you was in Vegas.
Right.
Pinski Suite.
Pinski Sweet. Oh God. Yes. You go next week or what is it?
Where?
Vegas. Next week.
Oh,
is
in November.
MJ
No,
BizCon.
I
MJ
doubt it.
BizCon.
I'm doing the Frenchy cannolis. I'm doing his class like on the 11th.
Oh, nice. Where's that? San Francisco?
Yeah, Bay Area. Yeah.
The cannoli class. Nice. Yes. The resin.
The resin.
The resin. Odie, you got some buds for us over here? You always got jars on you.
I did.
What do you mean my bag?
What do you
I was
mean?
gonna say I don't think I brought my backpack with me.
Oh, it's
I can go
okay.
grab it though. I'm pretty sure
It's all right. It's all right. I figured
Somewhere.
we were just
You
waiting
made
on
him
you.
feel
We're,
bad.
we're doing dabs before, but since you rolled in, we were like,
I
oh,
have
sure.
some Cinderella '99.
Mm.
I'm down. Whatever. I'll roll whatever you guys got. How's
Okay.
that?
First,
I'll leave
these are for you.
Oh, thank you. I
On
see
your-
you're all logoed up.
Yeah, I kind
Yeah.
of went whole hog this time, you know.
I like the logo.
Thank you.
Reminds me of Crown Royal a little
Trying
bit.
to be
but
classy, trying to
different.
class it up a little bit.
Well, you know, Uptown Grow Lab, we have a little bit of the shine, you know. It's the gold, the black and the gold.
Right.
So I picked these up just now.
Okay.
Anything interests you?
I can't read anything of these small anyway. I'd be like,
Yeah, I know.
There you go.
cheesy.
And then
what does that say on there?
These are headband.
It smells like cheese
Same
of some
shit.
sort. I can't see, so maybe.
Definitely cheesy.
That one smelled better.
This
That
is-
one smelled better.
This is also a headband, I believe.
Okay, cheese.
This will.
Okay, cheese. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a Rosetta Stone.
Oh, okay.
No, that is.
No, this is
I don't
Cindy.
remember. They gave it to me last night.
Sounds like a good strain. I don't
Like three
remember.
different
Been a good
flavors,
day.
And,
It's the I don't remember.
Shane, do you remember which one?
I'll do this one right for
It
right now.
was,
It's easy. It's right here.
No worries.
It's got no home. It's got no
It wasn't the
home.
road dog.
I'm very
Yeah, it's
easy.
either a stray dog or a
I-95.
I-95 Kennedy or something.
Is this from 2 or something? Or?
It's from Rich.
Oh, good. Okay, nice. Nice one. So, you here for the show tomorrow, or?
Yeah, I'm speaking on Sunday on pests and plagues in your garden.
Oh my God, are you bringing them, or what?
I hope not.
I
Brought the russets.
I like secretly. I just give them a handshake.
I'm hoping that I beat my
Guess what?
spider
You got
bites.
russets. How'd you
fuck
know?
that.
Just shook your hand. No.
Shit, I haven't got no russets.
You're that guy.
Yeah, you're that guy.
So I'm speaking on Sunday, but
yeah.
we have a booth there.
Cool.
We're selling some genetics and the book, and hanging out and having a good time talking to the people. You know.
Nice. You got a whole. You got like a slideshow and everything.
Yeah.
You have real vicious looking bugs. Because every time I show bugs on a slideshow, it's already huge, and you turn around and you just go like, oh, you're like all shiver.
We got some nasty mites and some withered leaves. You know.
You
some of that
gotta
good
gotta
shit.
have just because people haven't seen russets up close. Because by the time they actually get them, they're just
It's too late.
So they haven't really had time to inspect them.
to assimilate the information.
Well, they just look the same, but they keep getting bigger. But they're still gross. They're gross and weird because they almost look. They only have like 4 legs or something. They don't have.
like a worm.
Yeah, with arm like a salad. It's almost like it's trying to become a person. I think it could be. It could be the next generation. After we're done, that could be it. That could be taking over the earth.
Super mite.
Well, that's it. They have little hands. They got little if you look real close, it looks like they do.
You're gonna give me bad dreams, Adam.
That's why that's your job, dude. As a guy who stands in front of people and talks about bugs, your job is to make people go home and go like, "I'll never sleep again, dude. I saw that thing."
They keep me awake at night sometimes.
It'll be them and cockroaches.
Who we got? Uh-oh. Is this another top? Is this Eric coming back in? Is this Eric again? Yo.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. It's okay. So, yeah, Hope. I don't know what happened. She got.
She had to go stretch for a minute.
Hope's
Yeah,
beard. Hope's beard just wouldn't hold back.
She
It
had
just
to
came
breathe.
it came in really quick, and she's like, it's like Halloween Wolverine style. Just ching.
She needs some fresh air.
If you blink.
She turned into an OD Diesel.
So it went from a scientific talk to like just a bunch of dudes
Is it always the way?
Kinda. It's we're mixing it up. But
I'm glad you guys are finally smoking.
Me too.
I know. Well,
Me
I was
too.
waiting on Odie. We were just doing dabs.
Yeah, we were waiting on Odie.
We're trying to be
We
all
had to run to the
quiet with our
dispensary real
dabs,
quick,
So, Odie, what are you thinking about tissue culture yourself? And are you feeling it, or are you just
kind
kind
of
of like,
old school? I want to see.
no way, you're not old school.
Yeah.
Look at you.
Well, I mean, I know there's lots of great things coming.
Is your mic on good? I don't
Yeah.
know. It sounds weird.
It does sound a little weird.
Is this mic on good? Is his mic on?
Oh, it's not on.
Not on. Oh, I thought
That
you sounded like.
explains
I thought you sounded
Is
like
that
you were on-
better?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Hey,
much
there we
better,
go.
much better.
All
Yeah.
right, so now I can probably scoot it back a little bit.
A little bit, but not much. You got to go tight.
Yeah, it would be great. It's something that we could definitely use. I myself have strains that are 20, 25 years old.
Yeah, so just to clean them up,
cuts.
really, is
Yeah,
the key.
you
That's what I think.
See how much different it does compared to just putting them in the sun and letting the sun re-trigger them.
Right.
It's a space thing
Yeah.
as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely a lot of good that can come from it.
It's sort of like the disease thing too. Like you can do the same thing with a quarantine, but with a quarantine, you're going to spend like 2 or 3 months watching,
Yeah.
and
Right.
something might happen or might not. With micropropagation, it's 2 or 3 months, and you're guaranteed a clean product at the end.
Absolutely,
I think
and
sort
that's
of,
that's
without
definitely
the
a huge
risk of
benefit.
it crossing over to like other things in quarantine, blah blah blah.
Definitely a huge benefit for sure. And
And
that's
you
the
can
kind
keep-
of thing we
And
need,
you can
especially
keep
on
trying.
a
I
commercial.
mean, you can kind of keep trying with that. When you quarantine, you're kind of like putting a lot of energy towards it, and at that point, it'd be easy. I'd feel better with a failed tissue culture run than I would with trying to quarantine a plant and keep that thing alive and pay somebody or do it yourself, and all that money and energy going towards it, and then it could possibly cross over.
Well, on a
which is-
commercial scale, you could bring in one plant that could cost you $100,000 in catastrophic
Absolutely.
loss. of
Yeah.
thousands.
Oh yeah,
And it's like, so if you can guarantee that the plant coming in is clean, I mean,
Yeah, no, and that's a game changer. That's definitely where it needs to be, so that especially large scale commercial grows, when they do have issues, they need to clean all that up. That's the way to do it. Instead of that or start seeds. But I'm a seed guy, so I prefer everybody
like
start
you guys
seeds every
mentioned
time.
russet mites, and I've seen like broad mite infestations because they're microscopic. People think they're chasing nutrient deficiencies. They think it's a virus. By the time they actually scope them, or maybe I've been to grows, commercial licensed grows in Washington, where I went to the place and they didn't even know it was broad mites until I told them.
I know,
And they were
right.
in
Isn't
every,
that scary?
every part of their building.
We've been the
And then what they want to know is, well, can you get us clean plants?
Oh my
And that's when I
god!
started.
Oh my god!
saying,
And you're just
"Yeah."
rolling through, right? Just checking them out. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
it's terrible too, because we it is exactly what you said. It's like when it's by the time you actually can see it, it's at
You're
that
pretty
point where
far
they're already going on.
Oh, and they don't hang out. The damage that you see, the necrosis.
That's
Broad mites
past.
are really interesting bugs. The females are born with no legs, and they're quiescent. They're sort of just sit there, and the males fight over them and then carry them to the meristem for breeding. And so the damage you see is actually a toxin. The mites feeding themselves don't do much damage at all. They're like microscopic. They feed directly on the cells. They don't do much damage to the tissue. Like a thrip just tears through the surface.
That's why you don't notice them in the beginning,
These
because you're not
things-
really hurting it too bad, right?
Right, and they've migrated to the meristem. By the time you scope where the damage is, they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
So they can be really challenging to diagnose. Once you've seen them, then you kind of you see them everywhere.
Exactly. No, that's the thing I hate when it's
Yeah.
like it's almost like you put on like glasses and you can kind of now I can finally see, and all of a sudden you look at the bottom of every single stem and you're like no, like every single connector is like it's almost like when your first time you ever look up in your house and you're like, wow, I should probably clean all those little cobwebs up there. I mean, when the fuck did those happen?
Yeah.
It's like they happened
You weren't looking
right in front of your face, but just because you never looked up, just they didn't pay
Exactly.
attention. And the minute
The
you do pay
dust
attention,
bunny,
Yeah.
the herd of dust bunnies.
it's the dust bunny. herd.
I'm surprised no one called in or asked about dudding.
About what?
Oh, scientists have flown
Dudding.
in. The official scientist meeting is about to begin. It's going down. It's going down. Cool. Oh, you see, you have to leave?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're going with them? Or-
No.
Oh,
I
you're
just
good.
wanted to say thank you.
Oh, okay,
Thank
good.
you very much. I had a
We'll
blast.
see you later.
Eric, nice meeting you.
Oh, you too. No, I'll definitely.
Cheers.
I'll email you back. We should get on the phone together soon.
Very soon. Bye.
All right. Take care.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Hope.
I appreciate it.
For sure.
It was Dr. Hope Jones
Dr. Hope Jones.
from C4 Labs.
Yes.
Cheers.
That was awesome. And they're off to see some, they're going to get some, go pick up the science.
More science.
Yeah,
More science.
More science.
More science.
The scientist guy is
Bye,
coming.
Hope.
This is another.
Well, Eric-
Hope's growing another beard again.
Sorry, we
Every time
need
she
for-
leaves the room.
I needed to ask Hope for that. She needs an abstract for her talk.
An abstract.
She leave already?
Yeah, she already
She's
left.
gone.
She's gone.
Yeah, she
We'll tell her,
logged
though.
out. Yeah, we'll definitely follow up. And you have her contact info, correct? If not, I can
Oh, no,
put,
yeah,
I'll put
I-
you in
I
touch,
talked to her.
correct?
Yeah.
Cool. I hear you're, so we hear you're coming down to Oregon.
Yeah. I'm planning to work with Heroes of the Form
Yeah,
down there.
our buddies Heroes
That's
of
what we're
Farm.
hearing.
Yeah, we're good friends.
That's pretty
there.
exciting.
Super excited.
Yeah, that's a good team.
Top-notch bunch.
Absolutely. Good people, and
Yeah.
definitely they turn out some amazing product and have a great gene pool to work with. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys can do. Yep.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yep. Very cool.
So is it Trey Dog or something like that? I said? Smells
Yeah.
like- tastes like-
Yeah, either Trey Dog or I-95 Kim or Kim whatever.
I-95 Kim.
Yeah, whatever.
A little something.
That reminds me back home.
One of them Colorado crosses.
It's good. It's tasty.
It was a gift I was happy to receive.
Absolutely. Any gift of herb or beans is a blessing.
Yes.
Especially when you're traveling, because like
Yeah.
Yeah, I only brought so much, so yeah.
I never get anything.
you got kind of spooked from your other trip
Well,
that you
yeah,
had the
you
other
know,
time.
when I normally fly with, quite a bit to show off, and then
know.
they
I know.
turn me away with just over an ounce. Really? Come on.
That was lame. So now
but-
you're spooked.
Yeah, I don't want to go to jail. I've done my time for marijuana
For
and
cannabis.
jail. I'm good.
Yeah.
Too old or too
I
broke.
try to play
All right.
by the rules somewhat, but I'm a patient and I want to take my meds with me.
Amen.
It's hard to trust people's meds when you go places.
It really is.
It really is.
I mean, we were just
Well,
in
you
the
think
shop.
the worst is when you assume that you're gonna get fucking hooked up.
What
and
you're used
you
to.
never will, and then you're like, oh,
Right.
shoulda, coulda, woulda. And it's way better. Way better to like have brought way too much weed. That's usually the other problem.
Gun Nash.
Yeah. Instead of like so many times I've left town and didn't have the right person
Remember the
to give it to.
Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers? Did you read those comics?
Oh, yeah.
Fabulous
yeah.
Furry Freak. It's easier to make it through times of no money with weed than times of no weed with money.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
true.
Of course. And it's when you're traveling too, it's just that extra bonus of like at least you got good, like a little bit of hash is always good because that's going to guarantee to get you through. Like even if the weed sucks, you can throw a little bit of your own hash. I had that in Thailand. Like, if I didn't bring my own hash, I would have been bummed because I was going to bring weed there. I was too paranoid. And then I brought hash, but I only brought like maybe 7 or 8 grams. And I was there for almost 3 weeks. So it was just kind of like just enough. I could
Just
get
kinda
their
get you over the top,
get
right?
their weed, and I put a little bit of hash in it. But then all the locals would be like knocked out. You know what I mean? I'd be like, what? You guys, this weed sucks. Let me put some of this in there. And they'd be like, whoa.
Well, it's interesting other people's tolerances compared to particularly the people in this room and others, of similar
Oh, yeah.
ingestion habits.
We are a waste nation, right?
Yeah.
Smoke more than we need and stronger than we need. And tolerance levels and
Bigger,
push it to the
faster,
limit.
stronger.
Yeah, with 3 Red Bulls in between or some stupid
Yeah,
shit,
right.
some energy drinks. Which are way
Just get really drunk and stay awake with the Red Bull. That's good.
So, you're just cruising the show, or you got something? Oh, you said you got a booth.
Well, I got a booth where I'm speaking, and the YouTube channel's kind of blowing up. We got about 35,000 subscribers.
Nice.
And about 15,000 on Instagram, and we just keep building. We're doing live streams, string reviews up in Seattle, and wherever we travel. Like we went to a shop downtown, we picked up some things, so we'll review those in the next couple of days. That sort of thing.
And how many? So you're just in Seattle, or you're all over? Like from Seattle,
Well,
traveling all over.
I lived in New York for like 40 years. And then
No way.
Yeah, man. You couldn't tell, could you?
No.
And what was
Just
your?
like I couldn't tell he was old school. I was like, would be like, let me guess, let me figure this out.
And what's better? What was your profession?
Oh, I was a lawyer and a judge.
Right.
Wow. There you go. Obviously, That's a tough racket out there, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, I'm a cannabis refugee, essentially. I suffer from Crohn's disease. That's how I actually found the plant like 40 years ago. And last year was really rough. I had a colectomy, and then they gave me a bag, and then they put me back together. But while I was down, I was doing all these videos, strain reviews and whatnot. And people, it's real. I mean, it's pretty authentic, I think. I mean, I'm biased, right?
Yeah, right. It's the most authentic thing you're going to ever do for yourself, I'm sure, right? It's like, I am authentic as I can be. But, I mean, reviews are always one of those things where it's more the people got to feel like they obviously trust your opinion. That's the most important part. And obviously it's just how you present it, because some people, can't express. Like, it's funny when you hang out with people, you'll all be smoking the same weed, and yet everyone has their own little twist.
The different articulation of what their flavors are and the
some
effects.
people can they're tasting it, but they can't fucking
articulate
bring
it
it to their face, to their
it
mouth.
tastes like pine. Yeah, that's it, pine. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes it's really obvious. It's like, well, that's pretty damn obvious, because that's like, that is exactly, in your face, and other people don't get it, and then there'll be these little real new, and then other people will say it back to you, and you'll be like, I do not get that at all. And then the names got so ridiculous recently that I'm just like, you're really saying a lot when you're like telling people like they're going to be getting bananas, strawberries, mints, and chocolate chips and fucking sprinkles and all these things. And then you're like, and then you taste it and you're like, weed.
Really?
You're like, weed. You're like, there's not really any of that. Like, occasionally you'll be like one of the.
Well, something will come through in the flavor, but it's really unusual with those fancy names. Like, there's a Kush in Washington called like Breakfast Kush or something. The bud tender told me, "Oh yeah, man, it's like waffles on Sunday morning." I'm like, "Really?" It wasn't.
Yeah,
it wasn't.
I had that literally like about 2 weeks ago, and there was a little plant growing like literally through the crack of my house here, just from these certain seeds.
Random
or whatever.
seeds.
Yeah, and let it grow, and it was doing all right. And at the end, when it was like last couple of weeks, of course, I'm really like, oh, check this out. Like, nothing super duper special. It was just kind of, and then like near the last day, did that, and then like 2 minutes later, I was like, kind of like smelling, dude, it smells like fucking like maple syrup, right? And then like about 20 minutes later, I'm like, oh yeah, I ate like pancakes earlier. I was like,
it was on your fingers, right?
Still had like I cooked it for Nick or something. I cooked it, and I didn't actually eat it, but I cooked it for him, and I was like. But for like a second there, I was like, oh my God, overnight, it now smells like amazing. I found the most amazing plant.
Clone this thing.
Yeah, it was definitely not anything special. But so the review wise, how many have you done so far, you think?
We've got almost 1,000 videos on YouTube.
Okay.
They're not all reviews. I mean, we visit producers. I visit Adam Jacques' farm a couple of times, that sort of thing. And we do live streaming now.
Right.
Every day, pretty much, for like an hour.
Every day?
Pretty much.
Like Colbert, basically. Trying to be the Colbert of weed.
Well, I don't know about that,
day.
but,
we just once a week.
We just kind of hang out and smoke weed, and people from all over the world. I mean, that's the amazing thing about this plant. I don't have to tell you because but it's we get people from Europe, Australia, everywhere. I mean, it's Greece.
It's amazing how many people the plant brings together.
It's a fellowship. That's how I look at it.
That are made through the plant. It's just fascinating.
I mean, I don't like to look at it in a religious kind of way, but it is really a fellowship. I used to be a big cigar smoker, and it was sort of like that. And you could get as nerdy as you wanted to with cigars, as people do with cannabis these days. But particularly the medical aspect of you're suffering and you're smoking it, and you know somebody else who needs it, and they smoke it too. You're bonded immediately, and it's real. It's not bullshit.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends like that too who are older than me, but they would come to Amsterdam, and every time they came there, I'd be there pretty much solid for 20 years and running my store, and so I was there kind of like, the guy that they would come and check out, what's going on, what's the new thing, what's hot, what's this, what's that, you know what I mean? Right. And then to this day, like I can pretty much see those guys, and like even funnier was my one friend Alan, Alan Malka, he used to come out there all the time, and he kind of like sold his business, and he just like broke up with his woman, got this house, started growing his own plants, and then he ended up hiring Brittany Wagner recently. And all of a sudden he's sending me these pictures of hash, and And then she sends me a text. She's like, I'm working for a friend of yours. And I'm like, oh, so that's where this, because I was like, so all these pictures of Hash that you're sending me, because he made it look like he's like, oh, the guru, I have learned so much. And I'm like, wait a minute, I know your whole secret. Busted him the other day. I was like, is this your Hash or Brittany's Hash? He's like, well, I got to get a little help sometimes. You know, I was like,
We need that lady love.
It's always the ladies just killing me. You know?
yeah, no,
Yeah, absolutely.
It looked killer.
Absolutely.
It looked really good. But where other states are kind of like got any kind of like people, satellite people, or is it kind of all based out of the? You got any satellite people working?
You know, my partner, Uncle Tweezy, he's in New York. He's doing his thing. We grew together out there. We're still kind of a unit, but I'm doing my own thing out here.
The Tweez unit.
Yeah, the Tweez unit. Well, you know, he keeps it hopping uptown. What can I say?
Sure. And Mr. Odie, come on. You're always so, you talks over me all the time.
I know. It's
He
really
drives
annoying,
me-
right?
He drives me nuts.
It's really obnoxious.
Whenever he's on the show, I have to like tell him to be quiet all the time.
Well, you know.
You guys, are you guys?
I like the attention. What can I say?
What's going on with this? So now that Adam Jacques is not here,
Well, he's in
What's
town.
He's in town.
He's in town.
He
Okay,
he was
not
running
here.
behind on
I
getting his
got you.
presentation
So he's gonna,
put together.
so he's going to be okay. Cool. So
Yeah,
he'll be
he's
speaking.
there. He'll be speaking.
And,
That's what I thought.
he's also going to have a booth.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I was going to say that would suck if you didn't make it at all.
Oh,
Yeah,
people-
no, they're
I
here.
got it.
This is a gentleman actually
I-
from part of his garden.
I do know. I did get that on the way in, and
That's
that's why.
handy.
But we didn't get past that point to figure out. Like I thought he wasn't making it at all.
No, he's
No,
here.
no, he's here.
He's here.
Oh, cool.
He's just behind on getting his presentation put together. So.
Oh, you know, we've all been there.
He's
Right.
busy.
We just go for the least preparation possible. That way, there's like nothing to really fuck up. Because you're like, whatever.
Did you go to law school? It sure sounds like it.
Right. The least preparation possible is always the best.
Right.
No, but in general, it is. He does some pretty good. I've seen him do some. He's worked some big rooms, man.
The CBD thing game, he's pretty on that
He's
for
on
sure.
top.
He's
And there's going to be an amazing preachers panel on Sunday afternoon. Odie's going to be there.
Yeah.
you're there.
Sonny's
aren't
going to
you?
be there.
I think I'm there, right?
You're
there.
You're going to be there
Yeah.
too, right?
I think
Albert,
I'm
he'll be there.
I'll
You're
be
on
there.
the
JJ
panel.
will be there.
And I'm moderating it, I think.
Yeah,
Oh,
not
well,
you.
Damn, here we are. Half of us are here. just the obnoxious part of TSK and
He's
some.
running late this evening.
We're
Yeah.
missing that. We're missing the sarcasm of him in the corner. So.
Well, and you got JJ in there too, so
Oh my god. Oh no, but we no Rick though.
no Rick.
No, Rick.
Okay, because that would be like that combination. Maybe
just-
just
Yeah.
just,
it'll be all fun.
on like I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, don't forget
Yeah.
of energy. There's
Huh?
energy there.
Well, yeah, I don't know.
I'm not
I
characterizing it, I'm
Or
just saying there's
Colin. We had
energy.
Colin. We had
Yeah.
Colin. Bring in Colin just to spice it up a little bit. and then once he got
Yeah.
DJ, and then we're done. And
Yeah.
then it's over.
DJ,
We
it's
got
over.
it. It's complete. It's a complete. And Mike from Exotic might run in with a mask and just wrestle him down or something at some point. Wrestling mask. I can see it going down. He won't even want. He won't want to hear nothing about it. You know. I mean, like,
Oh, too much.
one day on the real Adam Dunn show. So so everybody's gonna be at the Emerald Cup, I assume, because we might as well talk about
Yeah.
that a little bit.
Possibly.
Yeah.
That's gonna possibly. You better be.
I got to,
William.
I got the
There's
boss at home. I got to clear some shit with her. But, you know.
It's a business trip.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, this year is going to be a real
It's gonna
important
be-
one. So it's going to be one of those ones where, a lot of people are going to be the first time they're going to be seeing each other, because they're given both have their own things going down, and there's
Right.
going to be a lot of issues and some things, a lot of stories we've already heard about, a bunch of stories we haven't heard about.
right.
It's going to be a million little charities going on.
Right.
It's going to be every table's going to have its own thing with its own box. So
Okay, I think you just made up my wife's mind.
So it's going to be interesting because there's going to be a lot of community. I think it's going to be. It'll be
I've
like
been
the.
saying the same thing.
Yeah, in a way, it's gonna be one of the ones that you kind of have to go to now. Now, if you even had the inkling of thought of going, the hardest part is gonna be staying somewhere. I think that's gonna be.
And the other thing
Creative.
You
is,
just got to go down to like Petaluma, and you're just gonna have to go out of
Just
town.
venture
a little
further
bit.
afield.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I mean, half-hour drive instead of a 10-minute drive.
What?
Yeah,
I mean,
right?
This is America.
and also
I'm
I
camping out.
Hey man, I live in Seattle.
I'll
It's
camp
nothing.
out at the burnt out hotel, wherever it is. I'm sleeping here. I had reservations.
with legalization in California going through, I mean, look at all the other states where it's happened. Look at the events.
They are
there
no more.
are no more events, or they're non-consumption.
Yeah, what is
So
up with that?
Look at next year's. It's going
That's
to be
because
like
now all of a sudden you enter the Clean Air Act.
right.
Which is totally avoidable as long as you don't have a bunch of employees. So
Yeah, but
What's everybody's at, Will?
but it's to
Like at a
hold-
strip
to
club?
hold an event.
Huh?
To hold an event,
Mm-hmm.
and then plus it's also comes into the public consumption.
Yeah, I know. It's all
But
bullshit.
you can't. Right. So not
Indoor,
only
though.
employees, but also volunteers.
Huh.
They count the same as well. I mean,
Do they?
yeah.
They're just volunteers. They shouldn't count. They're not full.
We're going to get you
Right.
appointed head OSHA.
Come on.
I'm sure there's going to be an opening soon.
But
So,
yeah, they just,
so you basically outsource everybody else in different groups, and then they're like, yeah, don't work for me. They work for that guy over there. There's
Yeah.
the lighting guys, and those guys work for those guys.
everybody's subcontractors.
They're
or
all
subcontractors.
subcontracted.
Yeah,
To
there's
a-
like
to a-
two guys running
Yeah.
the whole thing.
To a Panamanian corporation.
Jeez, I mean, if the Whitefish guys can get like a $300 million contract, and they only got 2 employees, we should be able to work the same deal with the Clean Air Act and be like, "What are you talking about, man? I got to rebuild fucking the entire Midwest of all their smoking places. I got to do. I'm in charge over here. I got 2 guys, two guys.
Two guys.
Yeah, so there's always. I mean, that is the biggest issue in most places is like they get you on zoning or they get you on
Right.
Indoor Clean Air Act or they get you on. Then that's like and cannabis people, even when they pay all the fees that they have to, they still get fucked. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So,
Because you got all the permits you got to apply for. You got to get, the
and
mass.
I think everybody who's ever thrown a party who's a weed guy, and like I kind of got my taste of it in '93 when I first kind of like that was my first like trying to rent a place and have an official party and not obviously not talk about weed too much, but kind of get the go ahead
Certain
like
people,
yeah, we could smoke kind of right maybe, and then when my friends get there it's fucking once people hear they can smoke,
Clouds.
bongs are coming out and everyone's fucking getting high, and it was like then the owners freak out, and it's like it's just the formula that goes through over and over and over again, because when they think of smoking, especially in Holland, they think of like, oh yeah, a couple guys with a smoky, they come in, you gotta roll a couple shaggies, and it's like, and I'm like, nah, not really like
Different.
that.
It's
It's
a
gonna
little
be
different.
It's gonna be a little different. All of a sudden, there's banners on the wall, people are smoking, blood blazing, you know what I mean? And the guys are like, oh my god, this is this is they're out of their minds, and then we are like getting in trouble. We're in the back room. Party's got to get shut down, and we're like begging them, begging, please, please, and that's just like happens still to this day because of the illegality of their. It's all because of their fucking liquor license. That's what they're scared of, and so you have to like find a place that doesn't have one, doesn't care about one, and that's the whole hang up. And most places have that, and that's why the weed things get fucked, because they're all like. Much rather make money off of drunk people than weed people.
Well, it's easier to take their money, isn't it?
Way easier. They can
Yeah. Well, the clubs in Spain are kind of nice. Still in Barcelona, right? It's very different than Amsterdam.
Yeah, and that's a cool model just because it's in between. But they sell weed there. That's the difference.
do.
So it's
They
like
do.
it's not really like when you sell weed. It's like okay, well that's not hard. You know what I mean? We can. This is it. We're ready. I just gotta open that door up. You get your jars out of your fucking thing. We're ready for business, bro. You know what I mean? And people would go. People would be like, "That weed's great," and we'd be killing it. You know what I mean? That's how easy it is. But over there, they're kind of like Spanish style, where they can make it nice. They're gonna make it really nice, and and some of them are.
Some of them are awesome.
A couple of them are really dingy and weird.
Well, it's like the shops, that runs the gamut, right? From hood to, high end.
My friend is opening up one right downtown somewhere. Don't ask me where.
In Barcelona.
Yeah. But now did you hear about? So now they're under siege from
Spain.
Spain, so it's going to be one of
It's
those
crazy
tense.
politics
It's going to be a
over there.
tense place for a little bit.
Right.
Unlike the rest of the world.
Yeah, exactly. At least theirs is like, but the problem is that they have a history of being really aggressive. So it's not like when they come cracking down, they come cracking
They're
down.
serious
So
about
it's
it.
like all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, that's why they're wearing those armor suit things,
Right, with those shields.
and they're ready to
And
go.
helmets.
Yeah, well they take it.
They take it very seriously.
Pretty seriously, that's for sure.
Well, they've dealt with the Basques for, X number of years.
Mhm.
And,
They've had their own separatist thing going on there all the time, but
they had a civil war, right?
Uh-huh.
In 1940, not that long ago. People
Right.
forget.
yeah, and that's the thing. There's older generations there that have all seen it and kind of, ooh, it's coming right back. And so it's weird though, because Holland was the same. Like they had this thing about not asking you for your papers because that would freak old people out. So they were like against the law for them to go up to you and say like, "Show me your papers," because if you say that, they can have
Get a guns of flash.
PTSD. So
Show me your papers.
so you're not allowed to ask for your papers. When I first moved there, and that was in '89. By '95, that was like over. You know what I mean? It was like they could ask you whatever.
Whip it out.
And so they kind of like that was like the cusp of that generation's being able to have any control over that kind of bullshit. You know what I mean? And at one point they're like, whatever, we're asking for people's papers because it got real crazy. Especially in '99, it got super crazy because of the euro and the bullshit. Once that killed it.
Once the Gilda disappeared.
Yeah, once they lost the Gilda, the mighty Gilda. Because the thing about that, it was actually the reverse because everything was so small, like the increments, that by the time you broke it down, that's because the Dutch are like super cheap anyway. So like they were loving that. Like,
They're good business people. They're good business people.
So like their money was even like small, like half of what ours was. So at the end of the day, you were like, when you started thinking about it, you're like, wait a minute, that's like 3.5 cents we're talking about now. Just pay it. You know what I mean? Like, so well, once the euro kicked in, it went the other way around, and then everything was like, what? It didn't make sense anymore, and it kind of lost. Plus, just going country to country lost its flavor because that was actually cool.
The differences.
Losing all that money was awesome. You were like, I lost so much. I just lost so much money at every single time I did that. No, a lot of people did, and they just didn't get it. But it was an economy. And it was weird, too, because back in the day, when people would come over there and be buying a lot of weed or whatever, they'd all be changing their money. And you just go to these change places, and they were just raking in cash because they were making a little bit here, a little bit there.
Yeah, it's just a little bit of the vig on the top.
And they were chiseling, and they were literally like, you know where the good ones were, and you go there with like 80 grand and change it, and and it'd be like, it'd be so shady and stupid, and there'd be people doing it, lining up, and it'd be like 9 of you guys, hey, everybody's looking at each other, and everyone's doing their own shady thing, and it was like the funniest thing. It was the most obvious, but yet weird, and just going off like just all day, all night.
Very sketchy.
Super sketchy. And then the euro, now you go there and ain't nothing going on. There's like one Yugoslavian guy changing, or a few other, there's a few little currencies that actually are Asians or something like that, and that's about it. And there ain't
In France, it's a lot of Arabs run the money changing thing.
Yeah, so it's kind of weird, all that kind of like culture that disappears as things get, global.
Mm-hmm.
Same with weed. It's like weed's getting global. It's all getting kind of like
homogenization, you think?
Yeah. Well, if Gorilla Glue is the most popular weed in London, you're like, really?
What?
That's what they're saying. That's what's reported out there in the world. Reportedly, they're paying a lot of money, like 60 quid a pound, like a fucking for a gram or some bullshit. You're like, what?
What?
They're just paying like top money.
I think we should pack some
it's the new
food
skunk.
savers, fellas.
It's the new skunk, mate. Well, that's the funny thing is, like, it's kind of flipped, where Europe is now looking to America back where they should have been. Like, we started off here, then it went there, then it went back, and it's like keeps flipping back and forth, and now it's back on that whatever's, here is the testing ground for everything.
Well, there's a lot more openness and a lot more ability to do it now.
Yeah.
With repercussions legally.
Like our guests.
Next thing you know, they're going to breathe the smell out of the glue like they did in...
Right.
Well, you don't have to do that hardly. You just have to grow it. It just kind of does that on its own. Really. It has its own.
Here's the new glue.
Ouch.
It's glue number 1.
It's pretty easy to lose the flavor.
Non-scented.
But when you do get the good flavor, it is nice. It's just a lot of times it's all, especially when people don't grow good, it looks good, but it just don't have any flavor left. So it's not as bad as the white, though. The white is definitely the most flavorless, beautiful plant ever. I mean, like, that is so beautiful.
White, yeah, that's
so beautiful, but
bland.
Nothing there, right?
Just has that no flavor. No flavor. What time we got? No, guys. We are at, oh my God, we're at the exact time. This is the perfect time to wind it down. Yeah. So, because we're like we started at 29:30. So we got 5 minutes left. Don't go crazy. Don't explode just because I said we get to go now. So, Sonny will be, you repping at a booth or nothing? You're just talking.
You're going to be at booth 420, 421 or 419 or something.
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, I'm at 420 and they're right next to me.
Wow.
I only brought a couple of things.
Paid a lot of money for that or what?
No, I
No
didn't
more?
actually. They love me.
That's good.
It's love.
Got 420 for you, bro. Every booth is 420, 421, 422, 4, like just
I
keep,
don't know.
It keeps doubling.
Maybe.
499, yeah.
710.
4299. It's like a hotel, the whole 420 floor or something. So you guys are. For you guys, what do you, have your seed company yet? Or is James set up, or what's going on?
I think actually
James-
Seed's here
Not
now.
personally.
He's here now.
He's not.
Yeah, he's
coming,
gonna
He's
be
here now.
Well, his
Yeah.
company's
They're
gonna be
there.
here.
They're there.
Okay, they're there.
JJ's there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's, we have quite a few different people there.
Yeah.
Good.
There's
But are you
I think
guys
four
at
groups.
a separate booth or something? Like
Somehow somebody canceled, so they're like, "Hey, here." So
Nice.
And they're right next to us.
You'll,
so we'll be hanging out
Nice.
together.
Double
guess we'll
double
be,
nice.
Yeah,
hanging
and
out
there'll be,
there.
you'll have, well, you'll have some genetics, yeah? Few, maybe. Well, Adam Jocks, we're gonna have a lot of Adam Jocks' genetics there, at my booth and at his. We've
I
got some
have
stuff.
new unreleased to the masses yet. Our head doctor and Old Dirty Diesel.
Oh, dirty.
Very,
Old Dirty
very,
Diesel.
very special.
Organ
Very
Diesel, Doctor
special.
Who,
Nice.
torpedoes.
So
Fucking
yeah,
me.
some of the new works.
Sounds good. And
I got some couple new things with me as well. So some Durban and Colombian red crosses.
I want.
Lamb's bread.
I want.
Uzbekistan. Afghan. Yeah.
who's Becky?
Yeah.
Miss
Afghan.
Becky.
I like the taste. of
Your
it.
son, I'm gonna steal his chocolate licorice candies, man.
Oh, do you have the silver?
Oh,
those
your
gold
wife
balls?
was,
gold
yeah,
balls,
your wife was
Oh.
sweet enough to give those to us. They were awesome.
That was straight from Sweden.
Sweden?
Straight over. Just came yesterday. Right off
Nice
the
care
plane.
package.
I know,
Lakrits.
yeah. So he's somehow we convinced him that when he goes out for Halloween that he gets to go out and get as much as he wants, but we're taking all the crap and then we're going to trade him out for the good stuff.
Sweet.
That way he doesn't just go eat all that. But he's, obviously
Right.
knows for
He
that
has a
shit.
5-year-old, right?
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, we don't, because there's some quality out there, a couple pieces here and there, but for the most part, we don't.
So
Mommy and
high
daddy,
fructose
mommy
corn
and
syrup.
daddy will consume all that crap for you, just to save you from
From yourself.
Save you from yourself.
From the evil
You don't-
evil grown-ups.
But it is kind of funny because when he sees like a Coca-Cola truck drive by, he goes, "Ew!" And I'm like, yeah, good job. It's like it's a bad truck. I'm like, yes, bad truck, bad, evil.
Absolutely.
So you guys will be hanging out and available the next couple of days here in Denver if anybody's around,
Yep.
and you'll be setting up at the booth
Yep.
talking about something. What are you going to be talking about?
Pest control.
Oh, you said pest
indoor
control.
gardens,
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah.
But people can check out the website.
Nice.
It's uptowngrowlab.net. Check out the channel on YouTube. We have a lot of fun.
Sweet. And you guys don't have nothing going.
Yeah, I decided not to do a workshop. I'm feeling
Round
stress-free,
tables and
you know?
talking with
Yeah,
you at
yeah,
a
yeah.
table again on Sunday.
I'm just
probably
kind of,
Sunday.
Yeah, the round
Are we
table's going to be
kicking
hot on
back?
Sunday.
Is that what we're doing?
Yeah,
That's a rumor.
yeah.
Okay, cool. I don't
Something.
know. I never know what we're doing. We just go.
Yeah.
We just
Go
go.
with the
come on
flow.
down.
We go. We do. We
Yeah,
leave.
some adventure.
Usually works out pretty good.
Yeah, so far.
Good.
Interesting.
And then
topics.
what time does that thing goes till 6 or something like that? Is that
It goes to
Yeah, I
5.
think 5 or 6.
Crown
right
Plaza?
around
You said Cround Plaza downtown, or is it the one by
By the airport.
Airport.
That one over that little
Yeah,
thingy,
Chambers,
thingy
yeah.
job.
And actually, tomorrow there's an after party for people who have
Oh,
the tickets for Halloween after party, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Can't
with
do
the
it.
Halloween
I go,
costume.
Well, I got my costume today.
yeah.
I got a big old monkey head.
Yeah, I forgot to think about like the reality costumes. I got my costume for I always get with the kid. Always have to go for like a group.
Your Cece was telling us some amazing things about your costumes.
Well, mine is straight off the just Amazon it. Give it to me. I'm not even going to think about it because I could have tried, but at the same time, it would have been a hell of a lot of work, cost me a bunch of money, and probably would have been fucking just as inconvenient because I have
for
to be
the 3
slime.
hours that you wore it.
Well, he wants me to be Slimer, right? So I was like, so all I did was I got a real Slimer suit, but I got 12 cans of glow-in-the-dark silly spray. So I'm going to be like,
You were going to be
sliming-
slimed.
I'm going to be sliming him like a motherfucker. So he's going to come up. He's going to get the most slimed kid you've ever seen by the end of the night. So,
That's awesome.
So it'll be all right.
That'll be a lot of fun.
It'll be fun. Exactly. Most flammable though. That's the only problem too.
No spleef lighting.
That shit is bad news. So.
Well,
cool.
don't let them smoke any cigarettes or cigars while you're out getting
Yeah,
candy.
right.
Usually
You'll be
not.
good.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, you guys got to be here right through the Halloween kind of weekend-ish because next week it's
Tuesday
it's
night.
for the really lame people who like forgot that it's in the middle of the week. And then I have to go on. Well, Tuesday's cool because I mean the real days I get to hang out with Nick and that's like I'm actually happy when it's not on a Saturday. Like oh yeah, Tuesday, perfect.
Right.
Go out. It's only that. It's boom, boom, boom. We're done. It's not like now we're gonna go to this bullshit. So. It's gonna be good. I think it'll be a good year. Then I have to come up with something else. So I was already thinking, like, fuck, I can't go out as Slimer to like anything else. I mean, like, what are you supposed to be? I'm Slimer. It's like my kid's home. Normally I got a kid, but he's shooting me and doing all this stuff. And right now I'm just, be all lame. So. All right, guys. Well, thank you for coming through and being the first ones in the new place, which is really close to my house. Oh, who's this? James, 541.
I was gonna say.
Is it 541?
I was supposed to give Mosca a shout out.
Oh yeah.
I was talking with him earlier.
Welcome to the Adam Dunn Show. Who we got there? I'll give him Mosca a set.
Hey, it's Eric back. I just wanted to say bye and thank you guys for having me before you wrapped up. I just wound up having to get on a call.
No, that's cool. That's cool. I did notice you. We did actually.
I was wondering.
We were actually talking to you for like in a half hour. Like, so Eric, what do you think?
No, I was on in the background. I know you were.
Eric is so quiet right now. No, it's cool. Well, thanks for calling in, and that was good. Well, and anytime something cool comes down, or you guys want to jump on board, and we love to do our scientists versus. That's why Shane knows we brings science to the table.
Right.
Then it always works out good because then we, especially when they start shaking their heads and they don't want to, they don't agree. That's always the best. It's like, oh, this is going to be good. Non-agreeing scientists are pretty much our core. That's
Hope and I are on the same page. Actually,
you guys are good.
Earlier, I'm hoping she's going to come and speak at the Society for In Vitro Biology. I'm a convener for the society, so I'm the one who's getting trying to get speakers
for
their cannabis session, and she's definitely high on the list. I'm excited for her to speak this year.
Nice. Nice. Awesome. Well, thanks for calling in, and thanks for listening to the show before, obviously.
For sure. I look forward to seeing you. Adam, when are you going to be local again? Coming out here anytime soon? I might be out there, and I forget when the Cannabis Grand Crew in Aspen, I think.
Oh yeah, so then you have to come. Well, you probably have to fly through here unless you're on some little private jet, and then we know we will not be seeing each other when you fly straight to Aspen. I'm straight for Aspen. I'll see you waving to you. But yeah, if you come through Denver, definitely give me a heads up and come on through the show.
Oh, for sure, sure.
Very cool.
All right.
Thanks, bro.
Thanks, Eric.
See you, Eric.
Yep, we'll see you soon.
Take care.
All right, bye.
So, all right. Well, thanks, guys, for coming to the show. Thanks, Eric, for calling in. Thanks, Hope and Ryan from C4 for dropping in, and the rest of the crew, and Adam Jacques' crew in the back there. And and then we got KTI and MTI so dedicatedly here.
We got two interns.
Yeah, two in this tiny space. That's like, if you go by space per intern, I'm doing really good.
You're killing the game.
I am so killing the game right now. So that
intern game is tight.
You start doing that and start looking at your facilities, you'll be like, damn, I need like 800 of them to beat up with Adam because he's in this tiny little space. But thanks for coming through the first time. We'll get the sound in here to be perfect. I'm sure it was a little weird at first, but it sounds pretty good now.
Hopefully it was good.
Sounds good.
It sounds good in my ears.
Exactly.
I don't know if that means anything at all, but I hope it out there does. Tune in next week. I have no idea, but something cool. Something's going down. Something big's
Always
happening.
something happening.
If there's no nuclear war, we'll be here. If there is, fuck.
It doesn't matter.
Denver's getting hit first, you know that.
Well, yeah, Colorado.
It's always Denver. They always say Denver, too. It's like, we can hit Denver. You're like, why do you say that? Why don't you say we could hit, like, Wyoming or somewhere there's actually...
They don't have NORAD.
They have some things secretly. I think if you're listening, that's where they're all at. Go there. Because that's where we just say they're all here. There's nothing here. Don't be stupid. We wouldn't put them here.
Yeah.
Under all that rock.
Yeah.
That would be dumb. You would never want to shoot into a mountain.
Hundreds of miles of train tracks. Yeah,
no. Thanks for listening to the show. See you guys next week. Peace.
Thanks, Adam.
Practically every one of the top 40 records being played on every radio station in the United States is a communication to the children to take a trip, to cop out, to groove. The psychedelic jackets on the record albums have their own hidden
This is a special question. We don't want you to smoke genetically modified ganja. We want you to smoke the real thing. We want you to smoke the natural herb. Some call it marijuana, some call it sensimedia, some call it lamb's bread, and some people call it